All right, hello and welcome to our EDH tier list for our 85 decks that we're going to rank from tiers 1 through 4. Me and Jordan are going to go through these, each talk a little bit about how each deck functions, where we would place them, and then come to a kind of consensus as to where we feel as though they should fit in the tier system that we have labeled here. So we have 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, and 4. Do you want to go over some of the criteria that you have for what makes each tier different?
Oh, for me personally, I evaluated this a lot like anybody would evaluate um, any competitive regular 60 card format like modern or standard or legacy or whatever. So it's basically like tier 1 decks are the decks that have the best shot of the most consistent shot of winning against the field. And then tier 1.5 is like the decks that are kind of almost there, are missing one or two pieces that the tier 1 decks have, so they're kind of knocking at the door. Tier 2, a little bit weaker, maybe not as consistent, don't have as many infinite win cons or tutors or what have you, or the mana's not as good or whatever it is. And then tier 2.5, again, same thing as like tier 1.5, is just they're kind of knocking at the door at being a tier 2 deck. They're just missing that little something extra. Tier 3 are more casual battle cruiser type decks. And yeah, the rest underneath that are just kind of like if they were put in a pod, like my thing is like if I had a pod of like say this tier 3 deck and I'm playing against decks that are listed in tier 3.5 and tier 4, like my deck should be expected to win. That's kind of how I looked at it. And I'm not using any mathematical or empirical evidence. It's just basically like my experience playing the deck or playing against the decks for the past, however many years we've been playing EDH or against the decks in general. So that was me. I didn't actually use any kind of like data to do it other than my experience.
Yeah, and we should preface this. This is, like I said, all 85 decks that we have experience playing with. That is including two of Joe's decks, who is not a member, but we do play sometimes with. So I did include them. I felt as though, like, if we have records of games with him, we should include them. And I agree with most of your assessments with that. It's like your lower tiers of tier 3 and below are like your Friday Night Magic, like the kids that are coming in, they build their decks off of maybe like budget restrictions or whatever, and they attempt to go, but you know that your deck should be expected to win if you're in the higher tiers.
Yeah, like they're basically like more like pet decks or whatever. They're casual or pet decks, and they can still be really good. They can still be playing really powerful things in them, but like they just have a lower ceiling just because if it's a tribal deck, you have to you're pigeonholed into playing certain cards that are worse than other non-tribal cards. So it's just things like that.
Yeah, and more like commander focused strategies rather than like just being
Right.
as optimal as possible as it could be in that commander shell. So all right, so we can get started. Our first one is your deck, your Shu Yun, which was transferred over from or transformed from the Narset Enlightened Master. Is that what it is? The Enlightened
Yep.
Master. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll give you my ranking after you give me yours because this is your deck, so I will kind of defer to you, but I will definitely give my input as well.
Okay. Let me find Shu Yun here. Um. So I have Shu Yun at a tier 3.5. And the reason being is that it's a more casual deck. It's Spellslinger, Voltron, um, and it's also not playing the best commander for it. Shuyan itself is pretty mana hungry in terms of like trying to give it double strike. It's also extremely mana intensive with the colors because you're playing so many 1 and 2 mana spells that like you have to have all your colors all the time. And I didn't technically build the deck in the most optimal way. I just kind of hastily threw it together, um, but it still performs. So I didn't put it in tier 4 because that's like the lowest of the low. So it still actually does have some pretty powerful things in it. It's just a strategy itself, and the commander kind of like push it in the lower tiers because it's not as powerful as a lot of the other things that we play.
No, I would say yeah, definitely around tier 3 to 3.5, and I'll elaborate on that. And I'm glad you talked about optimal play. Like this is going to be brought up multiple times, but if the deck isn't really optimal, we feel as though it's going to be in a lower tier because of the card selection compared to others like other Jeskai decks. Like we'll get into a couple of our other ones, but Shu Yun in Jeskai colors, like you said, is mana hungry and it's not very effective at ramping. So it's like it's more difficult to go off multiple turns in a row because usually it's a one turn you kill someone, and Voltron strategies, I think, as we get into ranking these tiers, are going to be in the lower, like maybe tier 2 would be the highest it could be. It is a Voltron strategy because of just like the nature of it in EDH, where you're trying to kill one person in one turn, especially through combat, which Shu Yun is trying to do. It's trying to go through attackers or blockers. I mean, so yeah, definitely I would put it tier 3.5. So I agree with that assessment. Yeah, no real arguments of whatever you just said. So we can go on.
I also want to add really quick as another kind of like, I'm a little late on this preface here, but you can find all of our deck lists on moxfield.com, especially my own. I'm very up to date on my own deck list, so you can follow me at moxfield.com, username ScoopDragon. I have all my decks on there. They're all, like I said, up to date, ready to go. So if you're interested in seeing my list and seeing, why I'm saying certain things or how my list looks, then you can go check it out there.
Yeah, I'm also now up to date. I was really behind on a lot of my decks, but now I am up to date. I will also include all of our usernames and deck lists from this tier system into the description in our YouTube video, so be sure to check those out. So, moving on, we're going to take out Crick, son of Yawgmoth, and before we even give you the chance, I'm going to put it right up in tier 1 based on recency bias. We just witnessed, the last time we played together was pretty much exactly what Crick wants to do.
Yeah, I have no problem with it being. I actually have it as probably the top rated deck in the entire pool.
Yeah, Mono Black is really good with tutors and having a mana source that is in your commander that is fairly easy to ramp out to, since it is colorless technically if you just spend Phyrexian mana. And then, like we've seen now twice over the last, like, I think 3 times that you've played it, is how powerful Lake of the Dead is, and how fast it accelerates him to get to where he wants to be in terms of storming and then getting to that infinite maybe Gary loop. And this is also what I wanted to talk about, is if you have a multitude of different win conditions in your deck or infinite combos, it's going to put you in a higher tier. That's usually how I ranked mine, is if it can win in multiple different angles. Yep. And Yawgmoth is definitely in that category of where it's always going to be. Or Crick, yes, sorry. Yawgmoth later. Crick, yes. Crick, yes.
I'm in complete agreement with that. It's just, it can attack from so many different angles, and my list is not even close to being optimized. It's nowhere near CEDH level, but just having a mana source, like something like Crick that turns all your black mana symbols into Phyrexian mana, and you have cards like Cabal Coffers, Lake of the Dead, all the tutors. It's just super explosive and consistent. It's monocolored. And you don't really have many of the drawbacks. Sure, you don't get to play blue, but if you're not playing CDH, that doesn't matter as much. I mean, I can consistently win on turn 3, 4, 5, like almost every single game. It's crazy. And I don't need like any mana to do it, like we saw in the one game. I just tutored a Lake of the Dead and I won on that turn.
Yeah, it was just hard to come back from that. But yeah. So from your one mono black commander that is in tier 1, we probably go to our first tier 4 to the deck, in my opinion, which is Jisa. Just like slow, like you said, like battle cruiser commander that is just more flavorful than anything. Her effect is relatively weak in terms of where our play group is, where you have to wait a whole turn with keeping her out and killing creatures that actually have some kind of value that could be used for Decayed. It's very dependent on what pot it's in, rather than just being good inherently. So I mean, I'd put it in tier 4. I don't know where you would put it. So if you have
So
any,
I actually put it one half tier up to 3.5, and the reason being is that it has the Gravecrawler 5xing altar combo in it. So and it's not as bad as some of the other tier 4 decks. Like there are some other tier 4 decks that are clearly worse than this. It's
yeah,
still mono black. You still have all the tutors, all the reanimation spells, and then the Gravecrawler 5xing altar type aristocrat loop combos with Blood Artist. So that's the reason I put it at 3.5. But yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head where she just doesn't impact the board enough, and it's very slow and tedious to try to get her to do her thing. This is more of like a pet deck trying to get her to do her thing more than like choosing a good commander.
hmm I definitely agree with your assessment into moving it up one half because having an infinite combo line is something that tier 4 decks will lack, and I did
Mm-hmm.
that when doing my list as well. So definitely reminding us that it does have that combo, and you have one with it, so I can't completely discredit it. So yeah, it is definitely, it's probably definitely in the probably definitely, but yeah, it's probably in the tier 3.5 list. All right,
All right.
moving on. Monocolors, I guess, are what we're really looking into right now, which will go into Krenko Mob Boss. And I'll let you take this one again, since this is another one of your decks. We're starting off with
Yeah.
four yours.
My Krenko deck is a pretty stock Krenko list. I mean, there's nothing really fancy about it. It's just goblins, goblins, and more goblins. I don't want to say it's been unchanged for the last 4 or 5 years, but it goes through very, very minor changes. Like, sure, I add Goblin Trash Master, then I get a Muxus, but like other than that, the deck has pretty much stayed true to its original concept, and it's just goblins on goblins, and Krenko is just extremely explosive if you let it stick. So I have it at currently, it's in one of the higher tiers, I'm sure. Yeah, I currently have it at tier 2. So it's not a tier 1.5 deck, competing with the tier 1 decks. It's pretty solidly in tier 2. I would even, not complain if it was in 2.5 because it just can absolutely win out of nowhere. But
hmm
being a tribal deck, it's got its restrictions. It's also not fully optimized. Like I said, I haven't really tinkered much with it. So over 4 years, it's pretty much stayed the same as it's always been.
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said is what I when I evaluated the Krenko list, I basically said the same thing. It does have the recruiter conspicuous snoop line with Kikijiki, so it's definitely able to do that. We've watched it win with the one creature that can do the 10 goblins for 10
Oh yeah, the
damage.
Skirk Prospector, yeah.
Yeah, Skirk Prospector is 1 mana one. What's the 5 mana one?
Skirk Fire Marshal.
Fire
My
Marshal.
bad.
That's yes, the Fire
Yeah.
Marshal. Yes, that's the one where we've lost to damage that way. And Kranko, like you said, is just a machine if it just gets left untouched. And sometimes with the higher tiers or maybe even the lower tiers, it is hard to find spot removal in our list. So if it does stick and if you can like cheat it out with quick mana, it is hard to kind of stop that snowball with how fast it accumulates and just exponential growth of goblins.
Right, and this is a pretty clear example, like a visual example of the difference between a tier 2 and a 3.5 is like if Shu Yun or Jisa get out to a fast start, I mean Jisa notwithstanding that infinite combo, but like if they get out to a fast start, it's like okay, you're looking down a potential like 12 damage on the next turn. Krenko can make like 20 goblins, and then you're in
Right.
a lot of trouble because there's so much that can happen past that point.
And like yeah, Shu Yun does have like slip through space and cards of that nature, but like if it's really hard to like then punch through goblins when it's just infinite chump blocking and things of that nature. So yeah, it's definitely the difference between these two areas of our tier list. All right, so next up I have my Silas and Armix deck, which I would admit is one of my pet decks, and I've told the group many times that this is probably one of my more favorite decks to play because of just the style of how artifacts play with synergies and all that. So I have this and Duretti, but I do prefer this over the Duretti list because of the blue synergies with things like Thought Monitor. And if I were to evaluate it, I would put it at the 1.5 mark or the 2 mark because I feel like in the pods that it's been in, it's done really well in. It's not optimally built, so I can't put it in tier 1. If it was, maybe, but right now I have it at a tier 1.5 or a tier 2. It would be borderline tier 2, like on the upper end, but how do you feel about playing against it?
I have it in 1.5. I think, yeah, like you said, because it's not optimized, it's definitely not in tier one, but it's got a lot of pieces to it, and it's pretty consistent in artifacts in blue and black. Man, it's just really explosive.
Hmm. Yeah, so not much more to say. I did add in like reanimator packages, which is a little bit weaker than what you're typically accustomed to with Silas. Instead of just doing a whole bunch of little artifacts and getting them back each turn, it's more of like a reanimation package as well. So just a little bit of difference, but that's still a really strong strategy with those two commanders being 3 CMC and having those kind of synergies. So moving on, we have Sliver Overlord, and I'm not going to mess that up this time. Um, but yeah, this is my Sliver deck. I have recently changed it to up the mana base. I would probably put it in tier 4 because of how terrible it is, but it is a permanent, all permanence deck except for Primal Surge. So it does have that line plus Sliver Queen, the Infinite Sliver Queen combo with Lava Belly Sliver. But other than that, it's really hard to gain momentum and kind of keep up with the speeds of the higher tiers. So where I put it was originally tier 3, um, just because it does have multiple infinite combo lines, and if it does get untouched, it is able to accumulate enough advantage to then power out what is seemingly an unstoppable board if you can get enough slivers out. But I mean, like I said, it's 5 colors. Its mana base is not optimized, but it's pretty good. It's updated. And it has that restriction of being all permanent rather than having ramp out into with sorceries and instants.
I personally have it at 3.5 in my list. Definitely not 4 because you do have like Primal Surge lines, and I didn't even think about the other like Sliver Queen lines, but or Sliver High Lord or whatever one it is. Whatever, it's all the same thing to
Yeah,
me.
it's a sliver queen with like the lava belly, and it's like infinite
Yeah, so I
Ashnod's
mean, like,
altar.
I could definitely see it being in 3 now that I'm looking like I'm looking at the other decks in 3 though, and they're just it like kind of pushes it down a notch because the other decks I have listed in 3, I would definitely take over this deck, and it sucks. It's hard because when you're playing tribal, you're so restricted on what you can play,
No, agreed, and I like
and
handicap
then on
it.
top of that, you're
Yeah,
playing permanents only,
yeah,
so you're really restricted in what you can play.
yeah. It's about that. It's pretty much that, and it's everything is a sliver. And if I draw the wrong slivers, like my 5 mana ones or 6 mana ones, and I don't have any kind of like short ramp or small ramp to go with it, like Gem Hide or Mana Weft or like Imperial Recruiter to search those, it's really hard to then power out my Silver Overlord, which is the focus of the deck. But yeah, so I mean, I would see it if I looked at like tier 3.5 right now. Um, Shu Yun's definitely at that level. Like I think Shu Yun definitely has similar power level to it. And like I said, Jisa is just because of the Gravecrawler line. I think it's up in the same echelon as well. All right, Palladium Wars. Uh, if I can start on Palladium Wars, Palladium Wars is the reason we have Palladium Wars in our pod is because we have Elder Dragons, and we have all 5 Elder Dragons amongst the 2 of us. Jordan has 4 of them. I play Arcades. Uh, so he has made this into his Enchantress Voltron strategy. And while Voltron suffers usually from being in a higher competitive level, I feel as though the Enchantress strategy definitely makes up some ground when it comes to being in similar pods with higher levels. However, that being said, Palladium Wars doesn't really offer much as a commander, and so I would put it in tier 3 just based on, and I'm putting it above the other commanders that we have at 3.5, is because of the Enchantress strategy with the synergies and that and the quality of cards that you have accumulated in that deck.
Yeah, I also have it right in tier 3, right smack dab in the middle because yeah, Palladium Wars is a pretty dookie commander, but it's a big flying dragon, so it can get the job done. But the Enchantress theme, outside of it, like you said, just so many strong cards that allow you to draw cards and accumulate card advantage or make tokens or whatever you need to do. So the deck kind of operates on its own axis without the commander, and then you can just out of nowhere just stick a big flying dragon and slap a bunch of auras on it and one-shot people.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know it's probably boring, but we don't have a lot of disagreements. We usually talk about this, and we usually have a kind of understanding of where decks usually fit. It's usually more with our other play members that we have more uh, arguments with about where decks should be placed. But speaking of which, we have Yarok next, Yarok the Desecrated, which we've seen multiple times go off with a strategy, and the reason is because of how strong the commander is. And I know it is a 5-mana commander that doesn't do anything when it comes out, but once it sticks and you're able to play some kind of ETB effect, or the fact that this card triggers off of any permanent is just insane to me, that it doubles and triples everything when things come out. So, and then the finishers are, I mean, your Peregrine Drake finishers, and having access to blue and having access to green, having access to black for tutors. So you have tutors, ramp, and like instant speed interaction with blue and counters. So I would put this in tier 1.5. It's definitely performed at the level of where our 1.5 decks are, and so I mean, I don't know what your opinion is really on this.
Another boring one for the books. 1.5. Yep. Got exactly 1.5. It's not optimized, so I can't put it in tier 1. But it is definitely powerful. It definitely wins. It has, so many ways to get to infinite combos, drawing cards, protecting it. But it does suffer because it's not optimized. The mana base is definitely not optimized. So it suffers a little bit in that respect, and it's a little slower because Yarok is a 5-mana commander that if you kill it, then the deck struggles to put things together after the fact. But if it sticks, then you're at a very high risk of just losing the game.
Yeah, it's kind of like the opposite of what the companion in 1.5 is Synarmix, which is you don't really need the commanders to be out to really go off. You have that's more of the synergy of the deck, but it's definitely one of those decks, and it's a little above Kranko because of just the colors and being able to have that strategy and not being restricted by the tribal aspect of the deck. So definitely in agreement upon that. Moving over to Rich's next deck, Perforos, and I struggle with this one because this is a fairly newer one. We've seen it a little bit. We've seen some of the things it can do. The fact that it can play instant speed and leave up all of its mana and have any type of like choice of what you really want to do in terms of like at the end of your opponent's turn, or to stop combat on their turn, to put a big dragon into play or pay big artifacts, and then just using like the die triggers for things like Cauldron of Souls. I think he used, or I think that was it. The persist one.
Persist one, yeah.
Yeah. So just having synergies like that. However, it is a mono red, 5 CMC, on a budget, I will say. So that's another point that I want to make. So it's not optimally built. So where I would put it, just looking at it right now, is probably tier 3. It is along the lines of where I would put most of the tier 3 decks in those pods.
I have it listed at 2.5 on mine, but that's probably a bit ambitious, honestly. Just because I don't even know if the deck plays any infinite combos or not. I thought it might have played like Kiki conscripts or something, but yeah, no, I could definitely see it being in tier 3. It is pretty explosive, but being a budget deck and everything kind of put a cap on how good it can actually be. And just a reminder for anyone that might have joined later or skipped ahead in the video if this is posted later, that these evaluations are based on our own current self-contained meta, our own Tough Customers metaverse, if you will. It's not like, oh, Crick is a tier 1 commander overall. It's just like my version of it in our meta puts it at tier 1.
Yeah. Definitely. And then last thing on Perforos is that I wanted to talk a little bit about like how explosive the deck could be with like the few times that we've seen it, and that's kind of why I think that I was kind of leaning more towards 2.5, but I do think the budget restrictions and it being monocolored, have kind of restricted it down to tier 3.
Yeah, and it is a little slower. Like you made the point, it's a 5 CMC commander, and then you need mana to activate. So
Yeah.
it takes some time to get going. But
Yeah.
if it makes it to the late game and it's able to stick a couple of like massive threats, then it can just kind of
Yeah.
steamroll the rest of the table.
And I think the last time we played it was almost where it could have snowballed out of control with that Fires of Invention effect that he doesn't even have to tap mana for that, and then he can leave his mana open for the sneak attack effect while also casting spells on his turn, and it gets around the whole Fires of Invention. You can't play spells on your opponent's turn, so definitely a powerful commander that could be built upon later on. Going forward, though, Sirach Dragonclaw, which is Jordan's teamer list. It's big. It started off as big monsters, and now it's like a snow theme with a lot of good teamer things. Personally, playing against it, I feel like the green tutors in the deck have put it into 2.5 with Koma and Kogla and the bigger creatures that go in with green. I think it is, if you put it in a pod with Palladia and Perforos, I think it should be a little bit more favored to win than the other two. Maybe. I mean, see, this is where I get into Perforos, and I'm just like, I don't know, because I feel like it can cheat out commanders or cheat out creatures.
That's why I put Sirach at tier 3 for that reason. It doesn't have an infinite combo line. It's just teamer good stuff. It's just really teamer monsters with no infinite combos. So that's kind of why I capped it at tier 3, because it can't really, just win a game. It has to be able to deal combat damage or burn damage to people. But it is playing extremely high card quality in terms of like tutors and interaction and threats. But it's capped off at certain, like the commander itself isn't super powerful and it doesn't have any infinite combos. So that was my logic. And like look at the decks next to it. Like if you put it in a pod, it's pretty equal.
Yeah, like I said, it was just probably the tutors. I do think, yeah, even thinking about Palladia, with the
just wait till we get to 2.5.
Yeah,
and then you'll understand.
I feel like that's what it's coming down to. I feel like once I get to like the cluster of what tier 3 and 2.5 are, because I feel like I've kind of rated decks and I'm kind of sorting them in the tier rather than like putting them in different tiers rather than sorting them inside their own tier, and that's where I'm like over ambitious, but a little bit. All right, moving on. It was one of my newest decks, the Ishkana Graph Widow deck. One of my favorite cards in Standard. That's when we started playing Standard, and just I really wanted to build a deck around it. Golgari, just spiders, but with having the Golgari infinite combo lines. It's performed well in the couple of games that we played. That being said, I do agree with what you made the comment about last time, is that it's been in weaker pods, so it does shine better in those weaker pods, including against Sirach. But I feel like in those games, it still wasn't super like dominant, where it was like it just took over the game until the very end of the game. So if I were to really rank this deck, feelings aside, it's probably tier 3. I know it has like 2 infinite combo lines, but like I feel like 2.5 is right outside of 2 now that we're like talking about it more and more. And like I feel like this has some really poor choices with like spiders and just trying to be flavorful, but still having really good green and black synergies and aristocrats and just like duplicating token strategies and blinking.
Yeah,
and
you're
that.
learning as we go. You're learning exactly how I've evaluated my tiers. You're like looking at 2.5 is knocking on the door to 2, and you're like, it's not that good.
Right.
And that's exactly where I put Ishkana, because yes, it has infinite combo line, but yes, you're also playing a really bad, strategy outside of it. So like similar vein as Jisa, but I think getting green kind of puts it a little bit on top of Jisa, but yeah, it's very, very similar.
Yeah, I look at like if Ishkana were to go against Kranko, if that was like knocking on the door, the amount of tokens generated from Kranko versus Ishkana is just unreal. Yep. So, definitely in that way. All right, moving on to Vasa, the
This is a fun one.
Right back in tier 3, and I think the only reason is because it has a limited draw aspect in the commander. Yes, it's an enchantress, but it has only 1 draw per turn. and it suffers from our Voltron strategy, and it goes in the same vein as Palladium Wars.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing as Palladium was, except it can draw a card
Mm-hmm.
whenever you cast an enchantment, which is makes it better than Palladium Wars, but it's uh, outside of the commander, the 99s are extremely similar.
Yep. Um, yeah, not much to say more than that. Balan,
Yeah.
the Wandering Knight, the Pumpkin Cat. This, I would say, suffers from Voltron strategy and just having to try to kill one person per turn. Having double strike on swords and being able to equip for such a cheap cost is definitely a benefit for it. But having, like I said, Voltron strategy and being constricted by mono white, I would put it right in that tier 3.
Yeah, Mono White has gotten a lot better over the last year, but yeah, it's not enough. It's basically taking it from like a tier 4 deck to a tier 3 deck.
Right.
But
Like I think
I can't like push it above that because, like you said, it's still monocolor. But you get access to all the swords. Swords are extremely high card quality, but you're playing
yeah,
equipment.
and
not
having
playing...
double strike with the
Yeah.
swords and like white is, which I think is why Shu Yun is a little bit below on the Voltron strategies, because it doesn't have the auras or the equipment that these decks have for Voltron strategies, and that's why it's kind of just knocking on the door. I feel like it might get, if it was built super optimal, it would get there. But
Mhm.
I feel like all these decks are going to be like, Voltron is going to be the capped off at 3, based on just like the inherent strategy that Voltron suffers from. Raynar, I think it's very, very similar to Jisa. It suffers from a lot of inherent, like the commander itself is looking to do things that aren't very good in commander, um, which is make one spirit a turn through and then cheating out foretell. Having the blink effect strategy in it is good in white and blue, definitely. But I feel like my Brago list, when it was playing non-planeswalkers, was super more optimal. And then the only reason it goes in 3.5 is because it does have the Narumea combo in it with Ephemerate or Sunscorched Desert and Ghostly Flicker, and being able to do that.
I still put it, even though it has that combo line, I still personally put it in. I admittedly forgot about this deck, but I intended to put it in tier 4.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, it has the infinite combo line, but outside of that, it's just a really clunky kind of, like, you have to have the right pieces. Like, you need to have, I don't know, it just doesn't seem, like, explosive enough. It just seems, like,
Yeah.
really slow, and
And
you
the
gotta
infinite
have all the
combo
right...
doesn't even kill that turn, like the
Yeah.
infinite unless it's with Sunscorched Desert, but and that's with Ghostly Flicker. But it's two sides of a deck too. You have the foretell side, then you also have like the blinking side of the deck. And if you draw a mixture, it's bad. If you draw all of one and looking for the other, it's bad. So it definitely suffers from that. So yeah.
Yeah, like, look at this deck against, like, Yorion.
Oh yeah, that's the other one. Yeah, Yorion. Like Yorion is just what this deck aspires to be, and it will never ever be it. So, I definitely agree. I think that it's lower, probably one of the lower ones on our list, if not the lowest.
Yeah, just playing against it all the time, or well,
Yeah.
however many times you played it. It's just like I never really felt threatened by it until you were like, oh, okay, I got this like Narumea combo, and I can make infinite spirit tokens, and I'm like, okay, well, I just like whatever we did, we killed it, or we just wrapped the board, or whatever it was.
Or interacted with, like interacted with the combo or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
it hasn't produced. I keep trying it just because I like the white blue blink mechanic, but now that I'm facing Yorion Flicker, it's depressing that it's so bad compared to it. But I digress. Going forward, Chromium, I would put this right up, and I know we haven't played much with the new version of this deck, but looking at the deck list and looking at strategy wise, I think it is just like Silas and Armix. I think the access to white doesn't, or like, I guess wouldn't even help it as much, but I don't think it hinders it as well. Like, I don't think it's even having a third color.
Yeah, I put it at 2 on my list only because I've literally only played it one time, so I don't know where it sits. But I can. It probably will end up being at 1.5 just because it has so many like crazy infinite combos in it.
Yep.
Um,
Just like the
so yeah,
Demir lines of
the only
like
thing it's lacking at that point is just the really powerful commander. But Chromium, not terrible, and I'm also playing cards like Cranial Plating and Nettle Cyst to be able to just use Chromium as like Palladium was this giant flying Voltron threat that can kill a player just out of nowhere and take them out of the game, and then I only have to deal with 2 people. Whereas opposed to like a traditional Voltron strategy, you're like all in on trying to attack 3 different opponents. This is just like kind of like the icing on the cake that I can do it out of nowhere.
yeah. I feel like just a Demir artifact shell like Silas and Armix just has that attrition game that it can go late with and really just accumulate value over the span of multiple turns, and then like you said, just put out a 7/7 flyer that is hard enough to deal with
With
when
Flash.
yeah, with flash and can't be countered. So it's
Mhm.
definitely, like I said, like upper echelon. I feel like once we play it, like you said, is going to be in that 1.5 range. If you have it at 2, fine. I'm gonna stick with
No,
just
yeah, like you can
based on the
keep it at 1.5
combos.
because it probably will end up there anyways, honestly, if I look at it.
Yeah, I think 2 is a safe bet, but I don't think it drops anywhere near below 2. So, all right, moving forward to James's monocolored green deck, which is Titania, the Protector of Argoth. I am going to put this at tier 3. And the reason being the lack of infinite combos. It does not have an infinite combo line. It does have very strong synergies and strong cards. I think Landfall is a strong mechanic. And she definitely enables that with good cards like Wasteland and attacking mana bases, which she doesn't do much of. I feel like that's something that Titania should want to do more of, while also accumulating 5/3 attackers. But the fact that it has to win through combat and it stalls the game can't put it above 3. In which I guess 3 is just based on card quality, but like I would even argue that this could even be like not on the same level as some of these decks. I mean, maybe, but I still think I would put it in tier 3 just based on card
Yeah,
quality.
no, like I had it at on my list. I have it at 2.5, but I'm gonna default to your choice because you made a lot of good points. And yeah, like looking at these competitors that I'd be playing against, like if it was in a pod with any of these tier 3 decks, I could see that being pretty even. And if it's against the lower decks underneath it, I could definitely see it being favored.
Right, yeah. And I'm now we're really curious as to where this is. What's knocking on the door of this Cranko only tier. We're about to call this the Cranko tier. But yeah, so
I'm sure we'll
uh
get to it at some point eventually.
yeah, we're gonna get into the better decks. So I promise. These are a lot of like our like pet decks
I don't
and
know. The next couple of decks, they don't look too
I know
promising.
they're not. But yeah, so Gishath, wins through combat, plays dinosaurs, tribal strategies, doesn't have much outside of it. Can play big beaters and can compete with other battle cruiser decks and sometimes be favored, but I think it's 3.5 just based on
Yeah,
tribal strategies and
I got it at 3.5, and that's because I mean it's won quite a few games just because of the fact that the dinosaurs put like massive beaters, not like 6/6. I'm talking like 8/8s and 10/10s on the table out of
yep.
nowhere. So it can definitely do that and win the game. But the way I built the deck, if you check it out, is really strongly dinosaur flavored. Like everything I put in the deck is trying to evoke some sort of, whether it's the artwork or the cards that I'm playing, it's trying to evoke that like Mesoamerican style, um, like dinosaur theme that they had in Ixalan with like the humans wearing a lot of like Aztec
Yeah, the
and
Sun Empire.
Mesoamerican. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, basically that. So I'm trying to like do all like nature and dinosaurs and that type of Sun Empire thing in the deck. So that kind of really puts a cap on how good it is. But it still plays a lot of like really powerful things.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, a big haste, vigilance, and trample that can put
Yeah.
other big dinosaurs in. Is definitely good. All right, moving on to our second Elder Dragon, or third Elder Dragon. Sorry, excuse me, forgot about Chromium. Our third Elder Dragon. We're gonna get to the fourth one next. I believe it is tier 4. The reason being is if you consistently kill Arcades, the deck cannot function. I can
Yep.
only play out cards that are defenders, and then I have to hopefully draw into High Alert or assault formation to make any kind of progress, and it has to win through combo. So it is just incredibly restricted through all those different limitations. The only reason it is ever like it does play some pretty good cards. It hasn't been updated. That being said, there's not much to update aside from like instants and sorceries and enchantments to go with it, because there's not many other good defenders that have been printed. But the fact that it is a draw engine on a commander is decent, but it is not the level of where our other decks are, which is
there's
why.
like commanders that, are the decks are slightly worse without the commanders on the table. Like say a Yarok, where they can still do things, but they're slightly worse. And then there's decks that can't do anything without the commander on the table.
This does not function if you kill it like twice or three times, and I have a handful of defenders in my hand. Like I'm sitting there not doing anything in the commander, like at the table. I mean, so yeah. All right. Moving on next to Vivictus, the Dire, in which I believe is
the controversial.
Yeah, I believe is in tier 2, and I'll get to my reasoning, but I want you to just give me your thoughts on where I put Vivictus.
Okay, so just to preface Vivictus, it is 99 permanents,
just like Slivers, but
and
not restricted.
The only spell is Vampiric Tutor. It's not Primal Surge, it's Vampiric Tutor. But yes, it's like Slivers, but it's not restricted on Tribe, so it's definitely higher than that. But it doesn't have any infinite combos, and it has to attack to win. And if you don't have a haste enabler, as we saw against Shorkai, if you wrath it, it just doesn't do anything. It just endless cycle of putting big things on the table and dying. So I had it at tier 3, kind of similar to Sirach Dragonclaw, because it plays very similar to that. But I'm sitting on one side of the table where, like, yes, I can put a bunch of big doofers on the table, but it's like I have to just wait. But there are games, like if I'm playing against decks that are lower than it, where it's just gonna, like, I play a Dragon Broodmother and it just takes over the game.
Right, I think the sacrifice strategy in Jund is just inherently better than what Sirach can do, and you have like Raminap Excavator, you have Mayhem Devil, and it just can control the board, like we'll talk about with Yawgmoth and why that deck is so good in our pods and like better against other decks. So like I'm sorry, I playing against this, and I really want to know the opinion of other people, maybe James, of what it might be like to play against Vivictus. I know the haste enabler is what you look for because you want to get Vivictus like going, and that's where it's the most like well-tuned machined. But I feel like just having like the Raminap Excavator combo or the synergies and
I don't even play
synergies.
Raminap.
Yeah, so I keep saying that, and I forgot that the last time we played it, you searched for it, and you were like, "Oh man, I don't have it." So yeah, all right.
But no, I got you. I'll agree to split it down the middle.
Okay.
Put it at 2.5. I'll agree to that.
I just think the Jund sacrifice, and even having Corvold, because you do have Corvold in the deck for like a secret commander, as we talked about multiple times, that it does have that like strong aspect to it that can definitely pull it out, which is where I'm going to put my next deck as well, which is going to be that 2.5 range.
Yeah, so like I just want to give one last opinion on this. It's because, like I said, I'm not playing any infinite combos, all permanent. So I'm super restricted on interaction as well. Mm-hmm. So if I don't get ahead, I'm not, like, I have to just basically rely on the other two players to try to take somebody out or whatever.
And then Vivictus is usually, I feel like, is a politics tool too, because if you stick it on the board, you can like say, hey, don't wipe the board because I can start picking off, opponents' permanents that are troublesome to maybe you if you like let me stick around and do things. So in Vampiric Tutor, like you said, is your one instant in the deck, but it definitely synergizes well with the commander. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as I was saying before, I would definitely put Omnath the Luxifoil as 2.5 as well, and that's because of just how inherently strong the landfall strategy is, and having a commander that also has a draw aspect onto it with landfall is going to push it above. Like if I were to play it and I'm looking at the tier 3 deck lists. And like if I were to play against Krenko, maybe it doesn't have a good matchup against Krenko, but the decks that I'd put similar to Krenko, I feel like it can hold its own. It wouldn't be favored, but it would be able to like it would be seen as a threat in multiple aspects during the game. Like we definitely got to control that before it gets too out of hand.
Yeah, I had it at tier 2, but you make a good point. Where it doesn't really have infinite combo line, so it's just basically all about value, but it's so good at that like, yeah, just like Vivictus, I mean, they're kind of like two peas in a pod, the two decks.
Yeah, and I will say this is also, and this is not to say it's worse than Vivictus, because I definitely think it's a little bit, maybe a little bit better, but it is restricted in the elemental aspect that I do play in the deck, so it does have like that
Yeah, but
going
you get to
against it.
play
But
Cyclonic Rift.
right, no, I that's what I'm saying. So like it's just like I'm playing like things like Cloud Conceer is like my 3-drop, and like yes,
I mean,
that
yeah,
does.
I'm playing things like that too in Vivictus, and now you get
I
access
understand
to
it, but I'm
all
saying like
the new Mono Horizon 2 elementals.
yeah, so it plays those as well, and it just ramps out. But yeah, it has that like detriment that it has to deal with just cards like that, and it just tries to be flavorful. All right, moving forward into Niv Mizzet, and this is one of James's more efficient decks that definitely are harder to deal with, and where I would put this is in tier 2.
I agree. Tier 2.
So
Because he took out
right,
the
that was my next
curiosity combos, because other than that it'd be tier 1, but
Yep.
because he cut those, kind of 2-card combos, it's definitely a tier 2 deck. Still extremely powerful with all of the wheels that he plays. And Niv Mizzet itself is just a house. If it sticks on the table and people are trying to play their spells to just advance their board state, yeah, he just draws them cards and starts pinging people or pinging creatures.
Yeah, so the other reason I wouldn't even put it in 1.5 is the lack of updates, and we'll get into this more with James's decks.
And the mana efficiency.
Right, so that was going to be my next point. Is he has a lot of 3-mana rocks instead of playing like all of the good 2-mana rocks, and then like some of the lands that he plays is more focused, because when he built it, I think he was more nervous that he wasn't going to be able to accumulate his blue, red, for his commander, but it seems as though that hasn't been much of an issue for him in any game that we've really played. I don't know if I recall any game that it's been an issue. So just maybe if it got updated, and even if he didn't even put in the curiosity combo, like you said, if it's curiosity combo, then it's definitely tier 1, because it's so hard to interact with Niv Mizzet. But more recently, it's been, if we kill it, it's hard for him to advance, because then he's stuck with wheels. But once he sticks it and hits a wheel, it's pretty much like
over.
You're an uphill battle amongst the 3 of you trying to take him out. And if one of you eliminated, say, an opponent, and then he sticks Niv Mizzet next and then wheels, and then it's just 2 of you versus that, it's incredibly difficult to get past that. Yeah. So definitely in that tier 2 range, and just based on commander, and then like you said, the wheels and the synergies it has. But yeah, moving on, Yorion. This deck is, I feel like me and you are going to rate it higher than maybe Rich would, who is the owner, and that is because of what I've seen from it. I think Yorion, and just based on like what Yorion has done, maybe I have some kind of like PTSD of Yorion and seeing it in standard.
It's gotten. I will say, and I know nobody's watched us, play these games, but like in the couple of the games that he did play Yorion, he was extremely close to winning.
Yep. The first game he played, he lost to an infinite combo line where he pretty much had the game locked up. He just did not have a counter in hand. Game 2, he faced an Authority of the Consuls, in which he was trying to infinitely blink his creatures in Peregrine Drake. So that was close to then losing. And then the last game he just played was a turn, I believe, 5 kill, and he was not even able to play Yorion out. Or he just barely played Yorion out on the final turn. Mm-hmm. So, that being said, I
put it at tier 2, just for now, because it's like, to me, it's kind of similar to Niv Mizzet, where it's just like he just accrues so much value if the game goes on and he has Yorion out.
Yep.
he just keeps, flickering back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and it's kind of like similar to Niv Mizzet, but because like Niv Mizzet's not playing the Curiosity combo or anything like that, I think it's in a pretty similar realm of how efficiently it can kill people.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Two things I do want to talk about with Yorion. It is on a budget, like most of Rich's decks are, which is
Yep.
obviously going to hold it back a little bit. But the fact that he can protect Yorion way easier than I feel like Niv Mizzet could protect Niv Mizzet is the reason. Like cards that are like ephemerate, like if you use spot removal on Yorion, if you're like trying to use Vivictus against Yorion, and you're like, I target the Yorion to try to get rid of it after he blinks he flickers all of his cards out, and he's left with Yorion, and you're like, all right, Vivictus attack, I'm going to target Yorion, and then he goes like ephemerate, and then it's just like, oh,
Or
great.
even worse, like
Like, it's
very
just-
interlude.
Yeah, like super
Like,
feels
just
bad.
blow-
Like they're just like blowouts, and it just feels awful. So like
Yeah.
the fact that it can protect itself that way is definitely what makes it a more efficient deck, even though it's not built as optimal as it could be.
Yeah, we haven't played it as much as some of the other decks, so we don't have like the same kind of read on it. But in the 3 or however many games that we played against it, it's just done a lot of really powerful things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna stick it at tier 2.
All right, moving forward. Skullbriar, the I think it's a Walking Grave.
Yep.
Voltron suffers from Voltron strategies. I don't know if I have to really elaborate this. Uses swords.
I mean, I put it at 2.5 just because like it has haste and it keeps all of its counters, so it's better than almost any other Voltron commander just inherently. So it's.
So I guess what I would say,
I can't
if you're
really
gonna put
argue with 3, but like
if you're gonna put it up against the 3 that it's, so say we have a pod and it's Skullbriar, Krenko, Niv Mizzet, and Yorion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like it could hold its own in that pod?
Well, it's lower than them, so not necessarily, but I think it can kill 2 out of the 3 of them. I think that's where it ends. Is like it's 2.5 and not 2 because it can kill 2 out of 3 of those decks, but it will always lose to the last one.
Yeah, that may be true. It's probably out of our
I mean, that could also
Voltron.
put it at 3 too, because I don't know what the rest of 2.5 is gonna be.
Yeah, so out of the Voltron strategies, I'm looking like I'm going down the list. Out of Voltron strategies, I feel like it might be the best at killing people as quickly as possible.
Yeah, because it has haste and it keeps its counter and it's
Yeah.
extremely cheap. So even if it dies, it just costs 4 mana with haste and all of its counters still to play it again.
Yeah. So it could be like a 4 mana 12/12 hasting creature.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But it always just struggles to kill the last person.
And I think it's because there's so many cards that are just or resources exhausted on just trying to kill the first 2. So yeah.
So yeah, whether it's 2.5 or 3, I can't really argue either way. But it is definitely up there. It's definitely up there with the other, because I have to put it above the other 3 Voltron strategies we have.
Right. I think it is better than the other one at doing what it does. With that being said, like Palladium Warriors or Tuvasa may have better card quality, but the effect of Skullbriar.
Yeah, Skullbriar is just a strictly better Voltron commander.
Correct. Yes. All right. General Ferris Rockerick. This is this deck. This is such a.
It
It
feels
is
bad. General feels bad.
Yeah. It's probably the most like. I struggle with it the most. I feel like every time I play it, I am just so close to doing exactly what it wants to do, and I can't get over the hump. It has to win through combat. It plays a slower strategy that's focusing on mana-intensive strategies that have multiple colors, and in red and white, where you can't ramp and mana fix as much as the other colors, it's definitely harder to get there. That being said, like if I don't think it's on the level. It doesn't have infinite combo lines.
I put it at 3.5 only because the card quality. I think it's just like, look at the decks next to it. I think it's better than those decks.
Yeah.
It's just that, like
Yeah.
I mean, either way, I put it there. I don't know if it was just to be nice and give you pity points, but
No, because I do feel like you said, if you match up with like these decks, granted, this probably has the one line of the Narumea combo that we like talked about. That's like the only like saving grace for it. This deck is completely reliant on its commander. This deck is semi reliant on its commander. Like it does definitely want to have the commander out at all times. Like it really struggles if it doesn't. But like that being said, like you said, there are good quality cards that are in the deck that can, like there's Idol of Oblivion that's been printed for card draw, and just all the new white card advantage cards that have been printed recently have definitely upped it to be a little bit better, and more recency built is new cards and everything. So yeah, it's probably going to end up, if we were to rank 3.5, it would probably be on the lower tier. And man, it just hurts because I love playing that deck. It just feels like the Hero Precinct one was one of the more like fun strategies for me when playing in Standard, even though that short time on Arena. So definitely upsetting. Next up, Seadrist, the Trader King, and which, man, looking
you've got
at
two really powerful things that you're doing here. Is that you're reanimating and you're also cheating creatures into play. So, I mean, I could see it at 2.5 or 3. I think I have it listed at 3 on my list, but it could be
that,
even 2.5 because
I think it might be 3 too, because I like wanted to put it at 3, but I feel like just reanimation strategy is good. I feel like it should be 3 because of the way I have it built. Like the mana curve in it is not great, but it does play really good like really good card quality, like Dockside Extortionist, and being able to do Dockside Extortionist with Unearth is a really good strategy, and just being able to continuously then get out creatures and fill your graveyard. But if it's in a fast game, it really struggles because reanimation is hard. If you face any kind of graveyard hate, it's a hard deck. I mean, it has ETB triggers, but like it's a hard deck to like really take off the ground if it doesn't have the access.
yeah,
to the graveyard.
it's kind of like Perforos, but a little bit better because
Yeah,
you have access to the colors.
yeah,
So,
I think
and you get like all the black reanimation spells, so it's definitely better than Perforos, but like in a similar kind of like axes, like
yeah, I agree. All
like
right,
Perforos you can at least cheat creatures from your hand into play, and
rather than from the
Seadrist is
graveyard.
all like it's all about the graveyard. So if you get like Bajuka Bogged or whatever, then
Or if
you're pretty
opponents like
screwed.
holding up like Relic of Progenitus or Scavenger
Yeah,
Grounds or something like that, it is a lot harder. So yeah, I
yeah.
agree. Nicol Bolas the Ravagers is
Super villains.
yeah, super villains. I was like super enemies. No, that's not it. But
Super villains.
yeah, super
Tier
villains.
3.
So
I
yeah,
got it
tier
at
three.
tier
Yep,
3.
yep.
Because the
I
card quality, it's an artifact synergy deck. It's another Grixis artifact synergy deck, and the card quality is extremely high. But it's Planeswalker tribal, so it does suffer a little bit. But
yeah, and comparatively to our other Planeswalkers deck, Grixis and having a commander that doesn't really enhance those Planeswalkers is
yeah.
definitely what puts it below the other two.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because
Totally.
playing Nicol Bolas only like gets a card on an opponent's
Basically,
hand.
if you want to take the expiring spike way of looking at it, is like, why would I play this versus what we'll get to later, like the other two Super Friends deck we have. Like,
Mhm.
why would I want to play this versus the other two? Because the other two are like actually synergized and are way more powerful.
I guess we should preface that our two Super Friends decks, because we do have James that claims that one of his decks are Super Friends, but we can argue.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, it's like it's got planeswalkers in it.
yeah, but like I feel Super Friends is like a deck focused completely around Planewalkers. Like that's a secondary win condition. But yeah, we'll get to that. All right, so Tatiova is one of Joe's two decks that we played with. We played with it a little bit of time. I am ranking it at tier 2.5 or tier 2 even, because I think it's better than Omnath, better card quality than Omnath, because it has a lot better
I
cards.
have it tier 2.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah, I would definitely put it, like, I feel like it is above Omnath.
Yeah, it's a little more consistent, and you're not restricted to playing elementals.
Yep, and then
So-
all of its landfall. It doesn't need 8 lands in play to get its landfall trigger, and it's gain 1 life, so a lot of the fetch lands just and playing he. We'll preface this again. He doesn't play by the same restriction we do, so he plays a lot more fetch lands, not just on-colored fetch lands. So that definitely enhances the strategy of Tatiova, and then playing just like landfall strategy is just inherently.
He's not playing infinite combos, so
right?
It's a trade-off.
Yep.
Like he gets to play all the fetch lands that he wants, but he's not playing any infinite combos, and he's not playing Cyclonic Rift.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, so not much more else to say about that. Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. Personally,
oh yes.
I mean,
El Padrino. What is El Padrino? He goes. I think it. I got it at 1.5.
Yep.
El Padrino 1.5. Big Daddy Yagi.
Yep. It has infinite combo lines on the commander.
Yeah.
Commander is part of the infinite combo. Very good at controlling the board. Being mono black, being able to search just like Crick, but not being able to go as quickly as Crick and be able to cheat mana like Crick does, but being able to control the board while also getting synergies from things such as the aristocrat strategy, and then hopefully looking to finish out the game that way and not lose life. Like that's the only detriment that's on Yawgmoth. So
you get to draw cards.
Mm-hmm.
You get to interact with the board. This is really, really solid stuff. And then, like we were alluding to earlier, it does play Planeswalkers, which is definitely not like an optimal Yawgmoth strategy at all. But, I mean, it does synergize in some way with it, where he can just ultimate a Planeswalker out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. And he does play like Dreadhorde General, which is probably, like we've talked about, is one of the best EDH ultimates that you can have for the entire table to try to win. But yeah, not much more else. Pretty standard Yawgmoth. Snapdax, the first of the mutants, the Godzillas.
Snapdax, the apex of medium.
Yeah.
It's a medium Mardu deck. It's medium Mardu.
It has very strong Mardu cards. Like I put in all of the free spells like Deflecting Swat, Deadly Relic. Yeah, it has all 3 of those. It has Teferi's Protection. It has
so it's your classic rock deck. It's extremely high card quality but very low synergy.
Yep, agreed. And then it has like the Archon of Cruelty, Reanimate and Animate Dead package, which is good, but it just, like you said, just doesn't have many other synergies than that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next on the list is Brago King Eternal, which was, like I said, it was formerly the ETB strategy, but now it is turned into my Super Friends deck, and having access to white and blue Super Friends is quite strong. We went into a pretty lengthy discussion last time we actually were together about the level of Planeswalkers that are in it, and having all access to all the Teferis, and even having a combo on a Teferi and having Chain Veil and Oath of Teferi, I think puts it in this 1.5 to 2 range. I believe it is a little bit better than the 2s, but I don't know if I'd put it in 1.5, so I'm going to defer to you as to where you would really like to put it.
I have it in 1.5, my friend.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to argue with it. I'm just the reason is because like I feel like it does struggle with faster strategies, but it does just it can win out of nowhere, and it just.
I'm looking at the decks below it, 2.5, and I would put my money, if I had to put factual money on a game, I would put my money on Brago against any of the 2s and 2.5s, just because it's got the interaction, it's got permission spells, it has really ridiculous ways to control the board. It just blink your Planeswalkers and activate them, and blink them and activate them, and you just get like crazy good board control. It's like being able to play blue-white control in Commander effectively, because in a one-on-one game you only have to activate your Planeswalker one time because one opponent, you're getting really good incremental value out of it. Well, you have 4 opponents in EDH, so blinking it doubles it, and then 3 opponents, my bad. So blinking it doubles it, and then having like Teferi, triples it, or having a Teferi Time Master, you get to do it on everybody's turn. So there are ways to circumvent the drawback of having 3 opponents with Brago.
Yep, agreed. Like you said, the only reason I said like that I would even think about it is because of, like, if I had to match it up with tier 1, which I think, like what we said, is like knocking on the door of tier 1. It's gonna be, and we agreed upon this. It's gonna be not the favorite in the matchup, but it still should be able to at least have its moments, or even have a game where it is pretty dominant in. So it could see some play, like it's on the fringe, but yeah, I'm definitely not going to argue with that. I think that it definitely has, like you said, the white blue control aspect to it. So it is a good strategy that I very surprised at how well it's worked. But then again, Wizards and Magic has really pushed the Teferi envelope over the last couple of years to really give it some of that juice that it needed. All right, moving on. Nigila the Blade Blossom, and I'm going to put this in tier 1, even though the results as of late have not provided what we may have expected from it. I have still seen enough of Nigila. I think that his fast mana acceleration with the 1 mana dorks, and being able to cheat Nigila into turn 2 and then attacking on turn 3, and then just having really good backup strategies like Veil of Summer and Dovin's Veto and anything like that he plays to really control the game. Silence, he plays anything like that really helps. He plays a perfect mana base. He tried to perfect it because he really wanted this deck to be the best deck that he had. So, I mean, tier 1, like I said, even though it doesn't have the results as of late.
Yep, you're preaching to the choir. You pretty much hit every single nail on the head that I personally was thinking about when I ranked it as a tier 1 deck. So sure, it doesn't have the empirical, like, factual data results that you would expect a tier 1 deck to have in terms of wins and losses, but he's always just on the very cusp of being able to just win. And the decks that he usually gets to play against with Nagila are also powered. And, like the last time we played it, I had a Drannith Magistrate on turn 2, so he wasn't able to play Nagila. Or, the time before that he played it, and he was going to be able to win on the very next turn or whatever. But yes, extremely powerful strategy, hyper efficient cards and mana base. Sure, you're playing a few suboptimal choices here and there in my decks, which we'll get to a little later on, but overall the deck is just Nagila is super, super powerful.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Moving into, now we're going to go into a little bit lower power. I see a couple of these. So Yuriko. I would put Yuriko probably
this one has surprised me.
What do you mean surprised? I guess
surprised me, and I thought it was better than it ended up being.
Yeah, so I would even put it at 3.5.
Yeah, where did I have it? I think I have it around there. Yuriko. Yep, 3.5. That's where I got it.
Because of... You can go ahead.
I was going to say, Yuriko, obviously, extremely powerful commander, as it sees. Very consistent play in CDH level events, but playing it on a budget, playing it in lower power pods, it also has to basically play to the level of competition. And if you're playing a bunch of big doofy stompy decks, it's very hard to win because they have a lot of interaction and usually are able to steamroll you on the back crack. And if you're just hitting like a bunch of land or 1 mana spells off your ninja triggers, it doesn't really bode well for you. Now, I mean, you can hit like a 10 mana to riches or whatever, or commit to memory, but like unless you're really able to sit there and manipulate your top deck constantly, you're just basically playing Russian roulette with the top of your deck.
Yeah, and he does play, like, we will say that he does play like the Scroll Rack's top and Limduel's Vault, but in Vampiric Tutor. But yeah, like you said, it's basically Russian roulette if you even get the attacks through. So it is definitely suffers from that. But yeah. Same thing. I'll go right into the next one. I think Feather it suffers from the same thing. It's a Voltron strategy. Even though it does have card advantage, it's a 1 creature. Like he doesn't play like any other creatures, and white and red can't technically protect it as much as blue could, based on like counter magic. I know he has protection spells that like target it, but I feel like the reason is because it has to kill one person per turn, and it usually struggles to get that much damage in.
I pushed it down just a half a notch, and that's like you kind of hit on some of the points that I was going to get to. Is like it's not playing blue, and also on top of that, the fact that the deck hasn't been updated in
Right.
like 2 or 3 years, so
Yeah.
it kind of like pushes it down a notch. Then it could be a tier 3 deck, but since it hasn't seen very many updates, it kind of is showing now. Its age is kind of showing, and
Yep.
it's really hasn't been able to do like some of the stuff it used to do back in 2019. It it can't do any of that stuff now.
Yeah, and then it just like it just falls behind because you play feather on turn 3, and then you go around a table, and if it's in a higher pod, then other decks are doing more like efficient things with turn 4, turn 5, rather than just playing. All right, like on your turn, I'm going to draw a card. On your turn, I'm going to draw a card. On your turn, I'm going to draw a card.
Yeah.
And then it can't really like take advantage of all that card advantage. It lacks that really like explosive like ending play, and like we said, lacks infinite combos, so lacks a way to really end the game. All right, Narfi, tier
Narfi,
3.
Narfi. So Rich is gonna kill me for this, but I actually ranked it at tier 2.5, I think.
All right, so I will. I understand it is zombie tribal, which is really really good. I feel as though he has built it in a way where it's more focused on snow and zombies, and it's not playing like I look at your Grimgrin deck and I see like a whole bunch of zombies that are like really like they work well together in terms of the aristocrat strategy, and that's where zombies I think really thrive. And Narfi doesn't do that as much. It's more of like I'm trying to keep my creatures on board. I'm trying to get ETB triggers rather than the aristocrat strategy, which can really take over a game.
Yeah, I definitely don't have it rated as high as Grimgrin for sure, but I just think because, like you said, it's zombies, and zombies are such a deep tribe that it just has like like a higher floor than most tribal decks, um, and that it can put out so much damage so quickly, and it's hard to stop. But I mean, I'm not going to argue with it being at tier 3 because I mean, like looking at the rest of the decks in tier 3, I can't really argue, you know, like ostensibly better than those decks. But
You know you're gonna hear
I
it.
had it, yeah, I had it ranked at 2.5, and I would hear for it to call Briar too. But I had it ranked at 2.5 just because the last couple of times I've seen it play, it just like it keeps coming. It's that old zombie saying, it just keeps coming for more. It just keeps coming. They
Yeah,
just keep
so
coming.
I forgot
So
what match it was in that we just played Narfi against, but he had like 3 lords out, and then he had Meat Hook Massacre. Oh, it was against
mhm.
Ishkana, and like Ishkana eventually like took over the game with my like blinking strategy and then going infinite. But like if I didn't have all those blockers, and I guess it's something that Narfi suffers from because of that. But I don't know, man. I do think, like you said, like just zombies are just a better tribe than spiders, and that's why maybe. I don't know
Yeah.
about like its win condition though, so maybe. All right. Next up on the list, Unesh. I would rank this as tier 3. The reason being, I know that it does perform well in lower pods. The reason being is because you're just playing a whole bunch of big sphinxes that have a whole bunch of high converted mana costs. And I'm not usually doing much, but hoping to maybe get mana acceleration through mana rocks by turns 2 and 3. And if I don't, I
Mhm.
really don't have many plays that go on during those time periods. But then, as we see through a lot of strategies, they can snowball really, really quick. Um, I mean, it does suffer from win conditions other than like attacking with flyers. I do have the omniscience, uh, and card selection is good with it, but yeah, omniscience being like its finisher is not always the best because it's 10 mana for a card that can easily be countered.
Yeah, I'm a little biased. I put it at tier 2 because I think it's pretty similar to Kronko, in terms, not like obviously you can't, just dump a whole bunch of Sphinxes on the board at one time, but like It's if the commander just stays out, it just starts accruing so much value because you're not only reducing the cost, you're cheating mana to play these big flyers, but you're also drawing potentially 2, 3, 4 cards off of them every time you play one. Every time you play one, you're drawing another 2 or 3 or 4 cards.
Yeah, and having access to blue does help it. I just think like the early game is just so rough on it, and it just puts it such like a handicap at the start of the game that it's hard to. If games are lasting maybe like 11, 12 turns, like it's definitely really good. But like I feel like our as our play group has evolved more and more and new cards have come out that it's been harder and harder to get those longer games in. I mean we've realized from the times that we played we're getting more and more games
Like,
in because
my argument's gonna be like, okay, I look at you like Yorion, Niv Mizzet, Krenko, Tetiova. Tetiova, you could definitely take over the game with flyers. And Niv Mizzet and Yorion, you have permission spells. So it's that would be my argument personally. Like Krenko might be the one deck that can like just bypass whatever it is, but you could just fly over me.
yeah.
It might just be, I don't know, a bias, but every time I've seen it, it's over. It shouldn't be as good as it is, but it's like Ishkana, but like better. It just always overperforms every time I see it.
Yeah. All right. Tyam. He's gonna hate me.
Tyam.
I 1.5.
Yeah, I got it at 1.52. That's too bad.
It's
He's gonna have to suffer from it.
The strategy in itself of just being able to recur constant, good, cheap threats, having things like Esper Sentinel in the deck, or just like any kind of like cheap interaction is going to be good. And even if you don't have time out, and I know he said this, like it doesn't do anything, but you can get infinite you can get infinite mana through Devoted Druid. Like you don't need time out to do that. So then you just get time back out.
But like there are a lot of like even high quality cards outside of Tyam that
he's like playing like Diabolic Intent.
You can maybe not quote unquote like win the game on the spot without Tyam on the table, but like there are definitely ways to stay in the game or get ahead in the game without the Tyam on the table.
Yep, and then it just has like really good synergies with the graveyard, and then being able to just like we've seen like the Sun Titan effect, but it's like on your commander that can constantly happen. It is. The one time I played it, I think it was a little bit like it wasn't built as properly as it should have been.
The one time, yeah, right. No, wait, you played Kave. You didn't play Tyam.
No, I played Tyam. Because I remember the Bushido card, and I was like, oh, this card's pretty good. But then like I found out that how good Wall of Roots is and how well he abuses it, and that's why we were always like, oh, you always grab like Wall of Roots, but it's because of how good it is, and like if it gets that, then like it just can overtake the game. It may not win because then we all view that as a threat, but I definitely think the synergies inside of Tyam and the card selection of all of that have been more than enough to push it into tier 1.5. And you ready for this? This I love that these are back to back, because if I'm honest, and being the pilot of this deck only, and I know it won our cup, but if I'm honest, I would put Duretti at 2.5.
Where do I got you, boy? I got him at 2. I think it's pretty similar to Tetiova. Or it's just an engine, a perpetual engine.
Yeah, I think
card advantage.
It doesn't rely on the commander, but and he'll say it's a combo, but we're not flaming you, but to Rich, but
it's the difference between like this and Duretti and Omnath, let's say, in tier 2.5, is that you have not only a Mindslaver combo, but you also have the Darksteel Citadel combo, which isn't a win condition, but it is a win condition.
Forge.
Oh yeah, Darksteel Forge. My bad.
Yeah, Citadel's land. Yeah, but yeah, it's just like it can cheat big artifacts in. It's just like we
And
have with a
playing
couple
cards
other
like
decks.
Ensnaring Bridge
Hmm.
really make it hard for anything below tier 2 to even attack it.
Yeah,
Like, look at
so
all the decks below tier 2 facing an Ensnaring Bridge with no cards in hand.
yes, and
You're
it
just,
being
like,
even if
dead.
you kill it, like I can recur it through Duretti's ability and all that, and just having value through artifacts. So yeah, I definitely think it's in there that range. It's just like being restricted to mono red, and I know red is a pretty good color for artifacts, but I just feel like the restrictions of mono red has put it.
Which usually I think would make sense, but if you're looking at it again from the perspective, this is our own like self-contained meta. And if
Yep.
you look at like standard or modern or whatever, like mono decks consistent. I think that's the kind of the thing here. Whereas in like CDH, you want more colors because who the fuck cares about colors because your mana bases are perfect.
Yeah.
Um, we're playing at like a suboptimal level where it actually does matter a little bit.
No, yeah, I agree. Next up, Sir Gwyn and knights and swords and Godo and where Snapdax the mediocre has been. Is that what you called it? Apex of
Yeah,
mediocre. Yeah.
Apex and medium,
Yep, Apex of medium. Yeah, it's right there. I mean,
medium
it's
Mardu.
it's a mix between Snapdax and Balan, and I
Yeah,
don't really know what else to say. It cheats,
no,
quick
yep,
costs, and swords.
yep.
All right.
It is like playing a knight tribal-ish theme, but I mean, it's not really anything super heavy. It's just like a handful of night creatures in it, just so it can equip for free. But other than that, it's basically, yeah, exactly like you said, Snapdax mixed with Balon.
Yep. All right, moving to Omnath, Locus of Rage. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would have this high tier 3 or low tier 2.5.
I have it
Um,
at tier 3, so it's probably going to end up in tier 3.
yep. If I can just comment really quick on this, I had
Mm-hmm.
this deck as one of the higher decks, and I continuously tell him that I feel like this is a strong deck. The reason I would keep it down here is because of the budget restrictions on the deck. Number one. Number two is we've seen it versus the Blue Omnath and how much of a different game strategy you can have with Blue Omnath versus Green Omnath, and the way that our game has sort of shifted, our meta has sort of shifted away from focusing on just, I mean, like getting to bolt a creature if you sacrifice elemental was a big deal back then, and I feel like it's definitely lost that sort of like impact on the meta since its conception that we made it.
Take a 10-second break to let out a little bug before my cat eats it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, just going on. Like I said, I did have this higher rated because I felt like my slogan was no matter what you're drawing gas because lands are gas for creatures, and if you're drawing spells, it's usually to advance your board state. So I think Omnath, like Angry Omnath, can be built a little bit better, and that's not a knock on him because of budget restrictions and what have you. Um, I just feel as though in our meta, the 3 damage from the elementals doesn't really affect the game as much as it used to, and so we've kind of knocked it down a couple of slots for that. Pretty solid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Good assessment.
Moving on, Gargos, Vicious Watcher, tier 4, has to win through combat, has to stay on the board to even do anything to cheat.
This is another deck that's kind of like Omnath, Locus of Rage in a way where, like, years ago, it was rated way higher. But
Mhm.
since we've not only evolved the cards that we're playing, but the strategies and the deck theories that we're using is and the play style, like learning the format a lot better and how
Yep.
to, you know, do threat assessment. It's gotten ostensibly worse over time.
Yep. Agreed. Not much more else to say. Um, moving on. Jorn, God of Winter. I would put this at tier 2.5, and that's because I have a lack of playing it, and the few times that I do have playing, like the experiences that I do have playing it, has shown me that it does have very powerful strategies. Being able to double mana in a turn for your instance and X draw spells is quite powerful, but its strategy of keeping the commander out has definitely shown to be a hindrance rather than helping the deck move forward when you can keep it out. So it's definitely got a large target on its back when it stays out.
Yeah, I had it rated at tier 2, but now that you mention that, like the last couple of times I played it, because you're right, we haven't really played it that much, so I don't have like a super good read on it. But um, yeah, like if you remove the commander, it's very hard for it to really get what it wants to do going.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, it is playing some super oppressive and powerful
Yeah.
things if you can
Yep.
get it going.
Yep. I play. If you do look at the list, I do play Winter Orb and as a theme card rather than just trying to be like a jerk, and it also helps the commander because then you are doubling your mana rather than in keeping your opponents at bay and being able to keep your commander out. And then as a finisher, since I play so many like extra spells to try to draw into my finish, I do play the 2-card combo with Witherbloom Apprentice and Chain of Smog to just try to, instead of sitting at the table for 15 turns while I'm having fun and no one else is, I have that as my win condition.
Yeah.
So that being said, we're gonna just move on. Is Sigarda Heron's Grace, which is my human tribal commander.
Did I not rank this one either? I don't remember.
This is 3.5.
Yeah.
It's, I mean,
I can see it in 4 or 3.5.
Yeah.
It's either one.
Yeah, I think just the human support over the last few sets have definitely helped move it up just a tad. Like Esper Sentinel and Herrenboom Elite have definitely helped it. It's just the strategy is not comparable to other human decks, and just
the commander is just not as good.
Yep, agreed.
Like, all right, the last year or so came out with like really powerful human commanders.
Yeah, and as we get to the other humans, we'll talk about how much better they are.
Speak of the devils.
Yep, Tovolar, probably top of tier 3. And that is because of the restriction of being forced to play werewolves. I think its ability is very strong. Its kill ability is very strong. The way you have it built with stacks to try to transform your werewolves is strong, but just having to play 4 mana for maybe like a double striking vampire or whatever is definitely a little bit more rough on its strategy when you're comparing it to other decks that are maybe in a higher tier than it.
Yeah, I wouldn't rate it as high as you. I mean, like absolutely tier 3, but like for me, it would be top of tier 3 because I still think like Sorok just being a generic teamer commander is better than it. But
I mean,
it's definitely not any like slouch. It draws cards. It can put a lot of damage on the board very quick. But I think if Blood Moon was better in our meta, then this deck would be a lot better. But it's just not. So it just suffers because like the best flavorful thing in the deck is just not very meta.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. All right. Our next on the list, and this is the second Apex that we're just going to throw right up to 1. We have not seen it lose yet. I even played it on Moto. It has not lost yet. It plays a very strong, quick strategy of recursive threats in multiple win conditions. It's just what you would basically see in a CDH Jeskai Vadrak deck, apart from all the free spells.
Yeah, it's slightly watered down because we have our own personal ban lists and restrictions, which we have available on our Mox pages if you wanted to check it out. But we have like ban list cards that we're not allowed to play in our own decks. So restrictions as well, which is the what we call the power tutors, which is like demonic tutor, mystical tutor, etc., etc. So without having access to all that and all the super mana that CDH has, if you just wipe those out of the deck and replace them with whatever, then it's pretty much like similar to what you'd be playing in CDH.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Brian Stoutarm, tier 4. It is all my decks, tier 4. Boros really bad. Why Rockerick was built. Like I tried to make it like Thieve and Throw, and it's just awful. I watched a version of it be played, and I'm like, oh, that's a pretty like cute strategy. God, it's ass.
I mean, it's not like unplayable. Like you could take it to your Sunday afternoon commander session at your local
and I
gaming
better hope that
store
I'm playing
and
against
have
like
fun. But like,
15-year-olds that haven't been able to even look online about deck
no,
lists or
like
anything.
okay, we're on a different. We're like we commander a little more seriously than most people, I would say.
Yeah.
So because we come from the competitive side of Magic, so there's a lot of commander players that are just straight up there to have fun. If that's the case, then Plan Start Arm's fine. But when you're playing more to win and do really powerful things, then
Like
Brian Stoutarm is not fine.
these two fight for the bottom spot all day, and I think it's Brian Stoutarm because this at least has a draw engine and can do something.
we should have
better colors.
like in the future we should have a best game of all the like the 4 top tier 1 decks and a worst game of the 4 worst tier 4 decks.
Yeah, before I rip them all apart, but yeah, it's all right. All right, next up is Temet, Vizier of Noctimon.
Speak of the devil.
Yeah,
he's not tier 4.
He's not.
Crazy.
So.
It's shocker.
Yeah.
Please check out my deck list. I actually think Rachel Weeks might have looked at my list at some point because she played on I Hate Your Deck. I think she played it on. But it wasn't my deck per se because it was my deck and a Germ Tribal deck. And she ended up going with Germ Tribal, but she took a lot of the things that my deck plays, which is pretty funny. But yeah, it's like Azorius really good stuff. Not just Azorius good stuff, it's Azorius really good stuff. The best way I can explain it is basically a Legacy Stoneblade. So it plays like a Stoneblade, a blue-white Stoneblade deck. And you're just playing like equipment in really, high-quality cards in Azorius colors. And trying to win you're trying to win through combat mostly, but you also have the backdoor win of the Heliod Ballista combo.
Mm-hmm. And being able to tutor that with Idyllic Tutor and Enlightened Tutor is strong while playing a control game with tokens and just trying to, just wait out for your combo. So I've seen it play really well, and like you said, really good Azorius cards. Not just good, but really good.
I actually have it rated higher than you put it. I think 2.5.
2.5?
Because I have it 2.5.
Yeah, I'd put it with Narfi. Yeah.
Yeah, because the card quality is just so high, and then you also have the backdoor combo.
Yep.
But you're limited by Temet being a pretty ass commander, and then like if you don't get a good start, then you're falling pretty far behind.
I agree. Next up is Kyler.
Kyler.
This is new. I will say this deck suffers from board wipes. I was very shockingly impressed by how well it won that one game so quickly. But
it felt like elves.
Yeah, but I think that it does not have any kind of synergies like elves do, and just board wipes and being stuck in. He has like a +1/+1 counter scheme, which is good. And going wide while also building them to be tall through Kyler is good, but if you remove the commander, it's just green-white humans, which, as we'll see through Sigarda, as we already talked about, and through when we get to Lenore, it's hard to be at a higher level when you're restricted by that.
Yeah,
tribe.
I think right now 3 is a cap for green-white humans, although, like I said before, they've gotten a lot better over the last 6 months to a year.
Yep.
Yeah, about a year now with Modern Horizons 2. But yeah, definitely cap the strategy, but still really explosive. Like can just kind of win out of nowhere against lower tier decks.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of tribal decks, I think this is one of like we've talked about, one of the better tribes, and that's because it's got a commander that can draw and just it's playing blue, so it can play good interaction. So I actually have it at 2.5 because I feel like every time I'm able to pilot Kumena, it does what it wants to do. It just, the only reason it falters is because things go around it through like infinite combos, and that's the only thing I feel like it really lacks is an infinite combo aside from Intruder Alarm, if you want to count that. But that's where I have it.
Yeah, no, I had it at I have it at tier 3 in my list, but when I look at it on the tier list against everything else, you made a good point. Like it draws a lot of cards, and it can circumvent a lot of things with blue permission spells. So yeah, I could see it being a 2.5 for sure.
All right, Dragonlord Silumgar.
didn't rank this one because I'm a dumbass.
Okay, well, I will rank it. It is tier 3. I think it
Yeah,
plays.
it's probably on the bottom end of tier 3.
Yep.
It's a battle cruiser deck for sure, but it's still playing some extremely powerful cards, but like big mana. It's all about big mana, so you have to get to the late game.
Yep, agreed. It can just like really swing the game if you're able to cast Dragonlord Silumgar against the right commander or right creature. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then blue and black. Just I feel like in our meta, it may not be for all of EDH, but like in our meta, blue and black cards. It just as we see when we got to the data, those are our top winning decks. That may be just because we play a lot of them, but I feel like it also the card selection that we play in the decks have definitely built upon that.
Yeah, best tutors, best card draw, best interaction.
Yep, agreed. Next up, Bracos. I would put this in tier 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
I think the card quality is really good in it. Like it plays Ristic Study, it plays Veil of Summer, it plays Assassin Trophy, it plays a lot of like the good interaction cards. It just suffers so much from a poor strategy. It's Mutate Infect. It does have some good mutate strategies, but it's one of the weaker mutate strategies. Auspicious Sterix is probably the only one you're really looking to mutate with. That's going to be any kind of production towards your game plan. But other than that, you can't really rely on this guy going to the graveyard and then recurring it over and over again. So, and then having
That's why I put it at tier 4, just because like the way it wins is so much worse than the decks in the 3.5 tier.
Yeah, like I said, the only reason I would probably put it in 3.5 is because it plays cards like Ristic Study and Assassin Trophy and Veil of Summer, like I mentioned, Cyclonic Rift. But yeah, I'm.
It's just so hard for it to win.
Yep, I agree. I've won the first game with it, and that was only because I had Ristic Study on turn 2, I believe, and then I just was able to control the game and then Emergent Ultimatum at the end.
I mean, like to the point you were trying to make about Ristic Studies, like in playing high quality in general, just like multicolors. Like all of our decks are playing like super high card quality, like those cards, so it kind of doesn't give it that extra bump over the other decks. I just think the strategy itself, like trying to Voltron and Infect, is just really bad.
Yep, I agree. All right, next up, Chainer. And I feel like this deck, when I talk about this deck, I feel like it should be in tier 2, but I'm gonna knock it down to tier 2.5, and like I'll change it if you have any kind of objections. But I have it at tier 2.5 because of the way I have it built. I feel like there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. I don't know. It's a deck that I haven't touched in quite some time because I feel like if I just mess around with it too much, I'm going to go too far off the path of what I really want. But I do want to try to make this at least comparable to tier 2 decks, but then also like I want to take the shell of what Crick does, but it's hard when Crick is just such a more powerful commander.
I actually have it ranked lower.
Do you?
Yeah, just because the last couple of times I've played against it, it hasn't been able to do much. It's hard. It's a very hard deck to evaluate because it's mono black, which means it has access to really powerful tutors, really powerful reanimation, and combos, which is everything you want, but it hasn't been able to just fire off on all cylinders. It's always just missing one of them.
Yep. I just experienced it against Joe when he just went turn 2 win on me, so but yeah.
Yeah, it's like it has the means to win. So maybe 2.5, maybe 2.5. It has the means to win because it kind of feels like Temet, even though it's a way more powerful commander than Temet. It's like it kind of feels like it's in that same realm.
Yeah. All right, we won't talk about that.
Oh, stop it! Oh,
no, we won't.
Stop it.
We won't talk about. No.
Oh my god. No, the deck is like better than 4. The deck has infinite combos. It's pretty good. I think I had it at. What did I have it at? Where are you at? Anawan. Anyone could be Anawan.
Right.
I had it at 3.5.
Okay, it bottom
it's
3.5.
It's definitely better than the 4 decks.
5 now?
No, the tier 4 decks.
Oh, tier 4 decks. I said the bottom 4 decks. Okay. Yeah. All right.
It's definitely better than the tier 4 decks.
Reaper King.
Um, I have Reaper King at where you at? 3.5, just for now. This could change because I've just recently changed the
I'm
deck.
like
I've
looking at it. I
upgraded it.
feel like I would put it above Silmgar, so I feel like I should put Reaper King at 3 and Silmgar at 3.5. But I mean, I'll.
Yeah,
Like,
either way. Yeah, no, like I could see it. I wouldn't argue either way.
because I just feel like
Um,
landfall is just such a strong strategy, and but like five
yeah,
color is definitely harder to pull off with it. So
yeah. And I'm not playing optimize
mm-hmm,
5-color landfall like you
mm-hmm.
could be. I'm playing weird, just trying to arcane adaptation my landfall
Right, yeah,
to scarecrows.
because
I mean,
you're
it's super fun.
yeah. Instead of focusing so much on like landfall value, you're more focused on trying to get your pieces together to then
I should
try
probably
to
explain the
lock it.
deck to people who are watching this that aren't a part of our group. So, Reaper King, this is an interesting one. This is more interesting than most decks because most of our decks are pretty stock list. Um, so Reaper King, most people are playing, obviously, Scarecrow Tribal, but Scarecrows in Magic are ass. They're absolutely ass. I've tried it. Trust me, I've tried it. It's bad. Um, so then the next thing that people defer to are changelings, and changelings are also ass. They're just terrible. So I'm thinking way outside the box, and I'm like, this is about the time that Zendikar Rising came. Cool, like 4-color Omnath, landfall strategies, and I'm like, cool, landfall is just by itself. Why can't I play that and then just use cards like Arcane Adaptation or Conspiracy, and then in Kaldheim we got the artifact that just produces shapeshifters and
Yeah,
changes.
Maskwood Nexus. Yep.
Yeah, Maskwood Nexus. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, that. So why don't I just do that and then play a Skewed Swarm and play a land and get 400 scarecrows? I don't have
Yeah.
to play crap ass scarecrows. I could just play a Skewed Swarm, which is actually a good card, and
Yep.
do that. So that's the Reaper King. For those of you who are not familiar with it, again, deck lists are on the mock field, but it's a landfall deck, a landfall conspiracy deck where I change all my creature types into scarecrows and try to play like a Skewed Swarm or Avenger of Zendikar and turn all of them into scarecrows and Armageddon my opponent's entire board.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Hapatra, tier 1 is
Right
I
up
think
to the top.
Yep, I think that you have built this somehow, some way. I am still dumbfounded to this day about how well this deck plays, and I guess that's a credit to you. But like, I don't see how it could be so consistent in the way that it's built. I understand that Yawgmoth is just so powerful with it, but the ways that you are able to get to Yawgmoth so quickly and so effectively and get it out with no real interaction against it is just mind blowing to me in our games that we know what's going to happen and it still happens. So it's been like frustrating to deal with. So, but it's definitely got like it's produced the results against top tier decks that it's just constantly like it just stomps us. And we're like, well, what can we do? It's not like I consistently tell myself, and I'm going to talk about this with a different deck. Like it's not that good, but it ends up being that good. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm just like, this is not that good, and it's just never ending. So that's Hapatra. I don't know if I can say really anything else about it.
Hapatra plays a lot. Yeah, it plays a lot like the black-green Yawgmoth decks in Modern.
Yep, and
and you just get Hapatra in the command zone as a combo piece where you don't need 2 Undying creatures, you only need 1 Hapatra, Yawgmoth, and you just Undying Loop and have like a Blood Artist.
Yep, and it's over. And then Court of Calling and all that stuff to keep
Yeah, there's
it
just a ton of tutors in the deck. There's a ton of draw in the deck. It's mostly tutors and fast mana. Like not even the good fast mana. It's like just mana dorks. And then I do play some suboptimal choices though. Like I'm still playing like Parallel Lives and Crater Hoof to attack on like a more normal mid range type of axes. But yeah, the deck is all about the combo for the most part.
Yep. All right, next up, I'm going to rank Felden in tier 3, solely based on just the lack of updates. I feel like this, and you can even make
Actually, they're like 3.5 because
three and a
of the
half.
lack
I was
of
just
update.
yeah, I was just
it
gonna
would be
say
3 with the
like
updates.
yeah, I feel like the strategy is just not optimal. Red artifacts. It seems like he really likes to play red artifacts with this in Magda, so it's just Magda's a better commander, and then just the lack of updates with like getting like the rummaging spells. I just feel like those really need to be swapped out, and then having the better red creatures that are now like available to him. It just needs to be there, and it's just not. So
Yeah, it could actually be probably 2.5 because he still plays like Kiki Conscript combo and
yeah, I mean there are
Like-
definitely a case that can be made for when it is optimized and updated.
just needs to be up to date because he still actually almost won a game with it the way it is. But
Yep. But yeah, going forward, Timna and Kamal.
oh baby, this is
Are we gonna
one of my favorite
agree?
decks.
Are we gonna agree that it's 1.5?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
We are. That's
Great.
1.5.
Okay, great.
Super duper high card quality above everything else. No infinite combos, but just super high card quality.
Abzan Farm.
Yeah, this Abzan
With
Farm is
Wraith
the green
Reanimator.
black player's dream in Commander.
Yep. Just really good. And then Timna being in the command zone. Timna will always be good in a farm strategy. So just a lot of dorky creatures like your mana dorks like Avacyn's Pilgrim, your other elves, and just trying to hit and get a whole bunch of advantage and draw and then get out your
put
big
a bunch of stacks creatures like Drannith Magistrate and
Archon of Myria, yep,
with,
and then Elish Norn.
Elish Norn or Archon of Cruelty on the table, and that's basically how you win the game, but super high card quality.
Agreed. Right. Probably one of James's best decks that really, really, like, desperately needs to be either updated or overlooked or changed, because I feel like this deck could be oppressive in our meta, but just lacks.
Tuned.
Yeah,
it just needs to be tuned, like updated and tuned.
Yeah. So where I would put it now is at 2, but I mean, like, maybe 2.5. If it's definitely
I have it at 2.5.
Yeah, I could see that as well.
Top of 2.5. Top of 2.5 for sure.
Because I feel like we can go on and on about how supportive elves are in Commander and in Magic's history is in general. So there's not much argument to be made to put it any lower than that. But it's just hard. I think mana base wise, there are issues that he suffers from. I mean, it would just be like, it would be better if he just like looked at the deck. I feel like, because this is his fifth iteration of elves on a different commander, so it's definitely hard to then go into the actual like intricacies of what he's changed out. But I feel like it's definitely been similar to those of his other decks. Just this commander is just a better commander for his elf tribals.
Yeah, for sure. It just comes down to like the small nuanced things like mana base and card choices like card draw and whatever. But elves themselves are just insanely powerful.
Yep. All right, moving on to Iluna, which will be King Dora, the other Apex. This is, I believe, the second last Apex. Yep.
I'm out of this one.
I know. So the reason he says this is because I had played Palancron in it, and with Palancron, I believe it is either 1.5 or 2. I'm going to stick it at 2.5 because I think it's proven to be really good. I don't know where it's at without Palancron. It lost to Patra in one of those games where I sat there and I go, I don't know what I'm doing against this deck anymore. It does have very strong synergies with... I got an idea off of Moxfield, and I thought it worked really well, and it does play a lot of good card quality, but it's just lacking a win condition, and if I play it more, I'll be able to maybe tune it to be a good win condition where it will stay in 2.5, but if I can't, I feel like it might drop down to 3, so that's just what I'll comment about that, and I understand, like I said, the deck has been changed before I played it last, or I played it once since I've changed it without Palancron, so it's hard to get a read on it, but yeah, that's my assessment of it.
Yeah. I can't really comment much on it because of the changes. But
Yeah.
other I can talk about before the changes and how stupid powerful it was.
Yeah.
Like it just feels like it's like what you said about Hapacha. It's like this deck can't be good. It's like nobody plays a Luna. It's terrible, and then you just keep winning on turn 4 and win on turn 4 and win on turn 5, and it's just
Yep.
like what the hell.
Yeah, all right, nothing. Okay, Peregrine Drake. Okay, I'm going to win now. Or Palancron, now I'm going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with all my mana doublers, like the deck is just Creature Storm. It's probably the coolest deck that I found ever from someone else. It's like I take ideas from a lot of other people, but this was probably the deck list that I found that I've like been most impressed with, and I thought it was just the most creative strategy that I've seen in Luna Shell, and that's why it stuck out to me. But yeah, it's
Yep,
just like a
definitely
Creature
really,
Storm.
really, really cool deck if you're looking to play a King Ghidorah. If you have a
Yeah.
King Ghidorah and you're looking to play that deck,
Yep.
take a look at this deck list. It's very cool, very unique.
Yep. Next up, Lenore suffers from the same issues as Sigarda, so I'll put it right next to it. Green White Humans, but not on the same level as Kyler, I believe. It does have a draw engine. It just cannot finish the game as well as Kyler has, and that's why I think it's a shade below.
Yeah, I had it ranked at tier 4, but tier 3.5 against the things that are also in 3.5 seems correct for the most part. I think like looking at Anawan and Spelden and Reaper King, it probably belongs in this tier. And yeah, definitely Sigarda.
Yeah.
Unless you want to push Sigarda down.
I mean, I can make a case for that too, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah. All right, Magda, I'm going to put in tier 2, and reason being, I'll go quick, is because of it. I guess it could be tier 2.5 because I feel like the deck should be built in terms of dragons rather than artifacts, and having a small artifact package in it. But like he went all out with artifacts and treasures. So, but the fact that it can get to its combo line pretty quickly is scary enough to then put it up into the higher tiers.
That's why I put it actually at 1.5. Is because of that exact reason. It's because of how consistently it gets to 5 treasures, and then it you're at risk of him grabbing Cloudstone Curio
Yep.
or
And then you're just dead to
or the whatever it is. Oh, the fucking dragon.
Terror of the Peaks.
Yeah, Terror of the Peaks. That's what
Yep.
it is.
Yep, all that good stuff. All right, next up, another 1.5. This is Edgar Markov.
Mm-hmm.
This might be through more playtests, and this might be up in tier 1 through casual, like through like EDH. But like I played it once since I changed it. I took it off of Play to Win's Dylan's deck. I took a lot of inspiration off of that with a lot of the cheaper vampires. Changed it up, made it a lot more well tuned. I still am working on the mana base a little bit. That's why I think that it's going to stay at 1.5 right now. But I feel like if I keep tuning it a little bit at a time, it'll definitely be up in that tier 1 area. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much can't add anything to it. We really haven't played it since you've updated. We only played it one time, but like the one time we played it, it was crazy, crazy powerful. So yeah.
All right, Urza, very much like Niv Mizzet, so I will put it in the same category as Niv Mizzet.
Mm-hmm.
So just very, very powerful commander. I think it hurts the way it's built because it's not with Jeweled Lotus, but because it's not on him. That is our own playgroup, so not having all the fast mana rocks is definitely harming it. So it can't be up in the tier 1. It might be up in tier 1.5. It's just updated a little bit, but yeah, I mean, not much more argument, right?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's just the way the deck is built, just like Niv Mizzet. He's choosing not to play certain. I mean, he's still playing like Winter Orb and things like that, so it's still playing some pretty oppressive things and some pretty powerful things that Urza can straight up busted by itself, but he is excluded playing or omitted playing a lot of the super insanely powerful things that Urza can do, like the 0 mana artifacts and like polymorph Urza, which is like the most powerful way to play Urza. He hasn't done that, or he hasn't played extra turns or anything like that. So yeah, I think tier 2 is right about where Urza should sit.
Yep. Elaplani is, I believe, tier 3.5. I think it's similar to
I think
Slivers.
that's also where I had it.
It is dependent on the commander. If the commander dies, you really have a
Yeah.
lot of cards that don't really do much, like Parallel Lives and Changelings, that don't really do much in the game as a whole, and you feel very far behind if you don't have the commander. That being said, it does have multiple combo finishes, so it can't be in tier 4 based on just that. So that's why I'm going to have it at tier 3.5. Yeah, 3.5.
Yeah, not really much of an argument for me. Other than, I mean, like you kind of hit it on the head. It's just she doesn't really do much if she's not on the table,
Yep.
and I mean, sure she can have some explosive plays, but she's pretty restrictive in what she has to do.
And if you don't have a
So
sack outlet, it's very, very hard to get the engine running.
right, yep.
So yeah, definitely dependent on that. All right, Mizzix is Magnus. I'm gonna put it at tier 2.5.
Mizzix, Isix. Is it Mizzix?
Yeah.
Is it Mizzix?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 is where I have two, so we're
Yep.
like perfectly on the same page.
Kill a
on that.
commander. It's very, very hard to work, but once commander's out, and you can even like have like a turn or two and just get even that first time you get her out, and then you get 2 or 3 spells to get those experience counters up. The next time you play her, you're cheating 7 mana spells for 3 mana, and that's just
Yeah, if
like,
we were talking about this like 2 years ago, she'd be probably up higher, but
yeah,
the cards have just gotten so much better since then.
at removing creatures and
Yeah.
yeah. Yep. And then Karth the Lion. I'm gonna put it right at 2.5.
But I got my boy Carte Leon. Yeah, 2.5. That's what I got.
Karth the
Him.
Leon. Yeah,
Yeah.
really good green and black planeswalkers strategies, being able to ultimate planeswalkers by the second go round, maybe one turn cycle round, and then you're able to ultimate them. They can be pretty backbreaking. Even like the new Nissas are not the Golgari one, but the one that everyone hated in standard, the 5 mana one that had the stack ability.
Yeah. Nissa who shakes the world.
Yeah, who shakes the world. Yeah, even getting all your forests out of your deck to then have all of your mana to then use Karth again and again is really good. And then just being able to cycle through planeswalkers over and over again is quite strong. And then just having green and black, just good card selection is proven to be good in our meta.
You got good ramp. You got good interaction for creatures. You have good tutors. And like you said, like Karth itself is just crazy good with planeswalkers because you can basically draw a planeswalker when you cast it, and then all of your plus abilities get you extra loyalty closer to your ultimates, or the minus abilities actually take less away, and then when your planeswalkers die, you can draw another one. So yeah, and then the way the deck is just built, playing a bunch of creature wrath, make the deck better than like tier 3, 3.5, 4 decks, which are generally for the most part creature decks.
Yep.
With the decks above tier 2.5 are more spell-based decks for the most part.
Agreed. 100%. Next up, Adeline. I would put this in tier 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the
I
reason
also
being,
have it linked in tier 2.
I would argue that she is the best mono white commander that EDH has right now, and because of just her speed and being able to have quick, like mono white taxing effects, even like Drannith Magistrate on turn 2 and this into turn 3, that is like so backbreaking, just accumulating more and more humans. Even if they block one or one opponent is able to block one, you just constantly are creating humans, and she's just. And now you have like Welcoming Vampire and all these cards that draw cards when like creatures come into play, and it's just hard to keep up with if you aren't at a higher level like some of these decks are.
Yeah, if you don't have infinite combos, this is like a really hard deck to stop once it gets going. So I will say, if you enjoy playing White Weenie strategy, traditional formats, this is the deck to play. Like, go check out my deck. This is the deck to play because it is White Weenie in EDH. You finally get to play like the real deal Holyfield White Weenie in EDH, and it's just such an awesome deck to play because of the fact that like you get to play like actual White Weenie in EDH, and like you said, you got all the stacks effects creatures, and you got all the new white creatures that get to draw your card. And the last couple of times I played it, or some of the last times I played it, I've even been like stuck on mana, and it didn't even matter because I made it to the late game and like I had like 2 or 3 mana, and I still almost won just because of the fact that it could just dump so many creatures on the table at one time.
Yep, I agree. Next up, I'm sorry. You are joining the list of tier 4 with Rakdos Overrides. You are finally in the crew. The way
That's fine with me.
The way that I mean, Rakdos is fine. Like I like playing against it. It's because it's a slower strategy. It's definitely unique with trying to deal as much like it's slug. It's trying to kill opponents while also putting big creatures out. It is not optimally built like Eldrazi's. He has demon sub themes, and so it's definitely not optimal to the point where it would even be pushed up into tier 3.5. I think that it's just if it was in a pod like this, it may be like one of the better decks, but it's still at this level.
Yeah, it's a Vorthos. Well, not really Vorthos, but it's a theme deck for sure. It's based off the Doom video game franchise, so I try to like play a lot of Doom theme cards that make it feel like the world of Doom. Um, but some still like we were talking about earlier, like it's still playing some really ridiculously powerful things. It's like not on the same level as like our efficient and streamlined and
Yep.
stick strategies.
Yeah, that's right. I definitely think it's just hindered. But yeah. Next up, Lesha, who smiles at death.
Lesha, who combos a lot.
Yep. 3.
I have it ranked at tier 2, honestly, because of the combos. It just has so many consistent ways of dumping creatures in the graveyard, and it has the Revelar Karmic Guide combo. It has Dockside. It has Imperial Recruiter. It has Recruiter the Guard. It has
being able to recur Dockside might just put it all the way up to tier 2, and that's just because of how dumb of a card Dockside Extortionist is. But like,
I think the few times that I played it before the last time, which I won, the few times I played it before it, I just got like either mana screwed when James or whatever destroyed my mana rock, and then I was just screwed from that point on.
I did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember that because I was like,
oh, I didn't have anything to.
Right,
I
remember this.
Else to do.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was that, and then like the time before that, we just like lost on turn 4. So it was like, it wasn't a really good evaluation of how good the deck is. I think the deck is actually really, really good. It's much better than it seems.
The only reason I'd put it at tier 3 is because of the dependency on commander and then having to attack. And like, if you attack, you have to get her through. I know she has first strike, but it's.
But it doesn't. Power. That's the thing, is that like that's the misconception. It doesn't actually have to, because I have tons of reanimation spells. I have the Animate Dead, Necromancer, Dance of the Dead.
Yeah, you do play that whole package in there. So yeah, it is like that. But yeah, I can definitely listening to more of. It's definitely a better strategy of the Mardu reanimation strategies rather than what we have with like Cedrus, which is big mana, Grixis. Reanimation, so, and you play a lot more of the reanimation spells in that deck, so yeah, I'm fine with that. Thantis the Warweaver or Weaver, the Warweaver.
Yeah, Warweaver.
Yeah. All right.
You got it at tier 4.
Yeah.
What did I put it at? I put it at 3.5. I think. Were you at Thantis?
If I'm honest, it's the lack of win conditions in it, and like
I actually didn't rank it.
It has some pretty powerful cards for what it wants to do, but the strategy is just so dependent on what the playgroup's doing, and then its lack of win condition is just hard. And he hates when Thantis is killed, which shouldn't matter as much, but like the deck is so dependent on your opponents attacking each other that it like needs that. And so Thantis, I think, is found in tier 4 because of that. Even though it has produced better results as of late. But yeah.
Yeah, gold control is just not, it has to be in, you have to be in a pot of like
Rakdos and
Lenore.
Yeah.
Right now,
we were trying to do a whole bunch of damage, and then you can sneak in for the last couple bits with Mob Rule or something. Yeah.
Except the last.
Oh no, did I lose you?
to have to attack into it.
Yeah, I think you cut out there for a little bit, but yeah.
But yeah, I was just saying that the last time I played against Renar, I think you killed his Thantis because you didn't
Yeah,
want his
yeah, yeah.
spirits to
Yep,
just attack into it.
yep, that
And
is
he,
true. He, yep. Do remember that. All right, Campbell Council of Allocation. I believe it is in tier 3.5. It does play a decent combo, and it does play a controlling white black strategy. I just think that white black doesn't have the tools that it really needs to get over the hump with a lot of these other strategies. Um,
I put it at 3 because it's pretty similar to Silumgar to me. Like it's more consistent than
yeah, because
Reaper
it
King
doesn't
and
require
Geshath
it doesn't
and
require to be with his commander. And in lower pods, I think life gain actually does matter.
right.
So Campbell does, and we'll talk about life gain and Orzov in a little bit, but yeah,
Like if
in
you're
three.
playing Kambal against Lenore, a Kambal against Anowar, Kambal against Felden, like you're in a pretty good position because of all the
Yeah,
life gain.
I also play like stacks in the Stone Blade package as well. So
Mm-hmm.
at least I have some kind of out that way.
Oh, we're finally getting to the end of this.
Yep. So if we want to
Tanks.
3 or 3.5 for Atarka. I feel like it's so underplayed because it's Dragon Tribal, but like if people are playing Dragon Tribal, why aren't you playing the one that can kill people?
Probably 3.5. It's probably like on the same level as Geshath.
Geshath,
Probably
yep.
the same as
Yep.
Geshath.
I just look and I'm like,
Probably
oh
like the
yeah,
same
that makes
thing.
sense. Geshath, yep. I was
Yeah, it's
like
basically
right when I got
Geshath
to it.
with dragons.
Yep, it's yeah, exactly. It's Geshath but dragons. Biolante, which is Nethroi, Apex of Death. This
Yeah,
deck,
this is Abzan, Aristocrat, Explosive.
yep, I really have to work on this deck. I feel like it was originally Marin, and I switched it over. I added white and put it into this shell, and I feel like I can't even really comment on this. Like I feel like it has like a
I
two
have
and
it
a
at
half.
2.5 just because of the ceiling is so high
Yeah, it's just I
where it can
feel
just
like the
win out of
deck
nowhere.
is just not built the right way yet. I feel
Hmm.
like I just like threw it all together and I just took a whole bunch of
Yeah, it could
ingredients and made
probably
a.
be like it could probably be like a 1.5. If it was built like perfectly, it would probably be like a 1.5.
Yeah, I'll have to really look into updating it. It's just been like on the back burner for so long that I really need to get back to it. But yeah, moving forward, Regna and Krav. I'll put this right next to Cambal. Um,
Nah, yeah, that's why I got it. I mean, like I don't have them arranged by
no, I
ranking
know. Yeah,
inside their own tiers, but like yeah, it's tier 3.
yeah.
But yeah, it does
It's
pretty much the same thing as Kambal does.
yeah. I just think it's more effective because it's just got higher life gain. Like it has more life gain strategies and token
Yeah, and then you also
creations.
make a bunch of tokens too, which
And
Kambal can't
then
do.
Krav is the draw engine in the deck,
Yeah.
which is good enough. But yeah, same thing. Orzov just stack slash life
So
drain.
Zur the Enchanter, Enchantress Esper. I had it rated at tier 4, but I don't know. We haven't really played against it much.
I just I don't even know why I put it in tier 3. It's tier 3.5, and that's not even like a knock on how I built it. I'm not. It's not Doomsday. It's not super
Yeah, that's an important
combo
point.
that really Zur shines in, but it has a lot of the good stacks pieces. It's just we just talked about it. I can attack on turn 5 if it stays out and get one piece to hurt one player, hopefully, or to try to set up my pillow fort and try to keep doing that and attacking and trying to set it up, but like not being able to do that and then hope to win. So and then usually Zur is too scary of a tutor to leave on the board to create that pillow fort. So it's usually looked at to be the biggest threat at the board, which
Hmm.
sometimes is fair assessment. Lurus of the Dream Den. This I would put in tier 1.5, but I can also make an argument for tier 2.
Yeah, I've got it in tier 2. It's kind of like a Lesha. And like Lesha, like it's kind of in that boat where it's got infinite combos, sure, but it's also handicapped by budget restrictions and whatnot.
Yeah,
but
sure.
still playing some really powerful stuff, just like
Yep.
Alesha
Yep.
or Yorion.
Diabolic
either one.
Intent and Demonic Tutor and getting into his like Sun Titan strategy, which is
Reanimation.
just really strong, powerful things. All right, Atraxa. Uh, th-
I have this. Slap this right next to your boy, Broncos.
right next to him, just
Yeah.
white, splashing white. Yeah, like you said. This is why I had it, and we like joked about this. You joked about this earlier today, and I said, well, like I feel like Atraxa plays a lot of good cards, and you made the counterpoint today that even though we're playing like Ristic Study and cards of that nature, that it doesn't really bump it up higher than
Yeah,
what it
because
needs to
all
be.
the decks I play in that.
Yeah, so now
It
it's at
doesn't
that
really
point.
like make it that much better, but yeah, this Atraxa deck is poison. It's infect tribal.
Yep, instead of like Super
So
Friends or
yeah,
counters.
it's not like your traditional infect deck where you try to attack and then play pump spells. It's more of you get a poison counter on each opponent, proliferate them to death, and
Yeah,
then just kind of control the board.
yep. It's
So
like
it's not like it's not horrible. It's definitely a deck that we have in all of the decks, but it's like it's just at such a disadvantage.
yep. All right, next deck, Giralf.
Speaking of the worst deck,
No, I am actually going to put this up here because I am going to give it a little star in tier 4 because I believe that this deck has overperformed in the way that I felt like this deck should have been at the bottom. Um, that being said, it's tier 4. Like
yeah,
we're not gonna sugarcoat this, but
it did win again.
I do think the flying blue zombies is something that is something to be like looked at when playing against it if you're in the lower pods, but like if it gets out of its zone, like I'm not gonna worry about it as much. It's definitely
Yeah.
gonna be the player that I'm gonna look at the least.
So this is like Nephalia tribal. It's not even like trying
Yep.
to abuse it in the same way that a lot of other people are, like with walls. This is just Nephalia tribal, which is just scary sea monsters and blue ditch scabs.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of just like a flavor deck more than anything. But yeah, like you said, like a bunch of blue flying zombies can actually do a lot of damage. It's
Mm-hmm.
just very slow, very
Yep.
very slow.
Agreed. Next up, Kozilek, the Great Distortion, is bottom of 3.5. I
I
think it's
got you,
on.
big cozy.
I think it's on the same level as like Cigar in that because you can get definitely fast mana, and what you're trying to do is just accumulate a whole bunch of fast mana. But then like you can get the big guy out, and then if your opponents have a wide board, or if they have some sort of like staxing effect, or if they have their creatures out that really are taking over the game, Colorless is hard pressed to find a way of interacting with that as well as it has before. But I've been lucky in getting Oblivion Stone a few times to try and reset the board to then kind of get ahead. So Kozilek, just
Totally fair.
fast mana, really good. All right, Kenrith is tier 1. Not
I
even
think I also have it at tier 1.
so I'll quickly go through this. Not even optimal build. The fact what it did last game has shown me that this deck deserves to be in tier 1 because it had fought through whatever like 4 or 5 pieces of interaction and still could have won. And it wasn't even through its like original combo line, which was Emil Dockside. It was through Peregrine Drake.
Yeah,
So,
we
like,
had all three of us play like 5 or 6 pieces of interaction. We had to exhaust every single last piece of interaction that we had down to like the Noxious Revival.
I was playing Silas Ren and Armix, like I was playing one of my better decks, and it was just
And I
like,
was playing Timna Kamal.
oh yep, because then I ended up winning with Silas and Armix. So yeah, we were playing higher power decks, and this deck just fought through everything, and then
And
it
James was
eventually,
playing Najila.
yep, because you were playing that's when you played Dranath Magistrate.
Yep.
So this
it
was
fought through all that interaction. It just barely we needed every single last piece. If I didn't have the Noxious Revival, he would have won. So we needed every single last card.
Yep, agreed. But yeah.
Oh yeah, a budget build, not optimal in any way, but still extremely powerful.
Yep. Sidisi Brood Tyrant. I believe this is in tier 3, just based on colors and efficiency of zombies. But yeah.
I have her at 2.5 because of the combos.
Yeah, there are a few
She's
combos.
she's pretty fast too. Like if she gets the mill engine going, because like if it's like Temet Narfi, like this pod is like Temet Narfi Vivictus. I feel like it's in that kind of range. But like if Vivictus, like she's very similar to Vivictus, where she just like is a lot of if she gets the mill engine going, it's a lot of value that it's very hard to stop unless you have like the answer. Like a Vivictus, you need a Wrath, and at CDC you need like an XI.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. All right, Shorkai. This is Joe's deck. We played a lot against. Not built very well in our pod. That's not saying it's built terribly. In our meta, when playing against us, it is not what it needs to be. This was a couple months ago when it first came out, so it may have been updated, but as of now, that's where we have it because of just. I mean, this is more casual.
I mean, I put
CH.
it at 3, but like I get why it's at 4.
I just think
I
like,
put it at 3
just,
because it had so much interaction, but it has like no.
It was
way
so
to
good
win.
it was so good for the table, but yeah, it's just I don't see it winning. Like its win condition is the actual vehicle itself, or to try to get a whole bunch of artifact creatures to have flying. Yeah, it's
almost impossible to win. Yeah, it's like a track. It's very much like a track. So like it's got a lot of good cards in it, and it can control the board really well, but it's just so hard to win.
Which deck of James's needs to go down here? We need to have a representation of everyone's, but I digress. Anyways, going on forward, Malcolm breaches.
Tier 4 automatically. Tier 4
Yeah.
Pirates Tribal.
I agree.
Pirate Tribal just bad. Pirate Tribal bad.
Tier 1.5.
I have it at tier 2 because it is still like you got like think of all the games that I played with it where I didn't get.
You're right. I would say it's on the level of Adeline and Urza.
Because if I draw Glenhorn Buccaneer,
I just think it's better than
one of the
Unash. Like I
hardest-
think.
but it's not better than like Niv Mizzet.
You're right. Yeah, maybe this is my bias of Unesh not being up here, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah, maybe Unesh should be put down to 2.5. Like now that I'm looking at all of it, maybe it should be down to 2.5 because it does feel pretty similar to like Vivictus and Mizzix and
Yeah.
Sidisi.
Yeah, but
yeah, but it's Pirate Tribal. It's playing a bunch of pirate themed cards like Insurrection and Blatant Thievery and Coastal Piracy. So it's not even like super streamlined optimal build of Malcolm.
Yep.
But it does play Glenhorn Buccaneers, so it can just
and Curiosity, like
No way.
Curiosity effects are also like combo pieces, like.
Yeah, but they're not. I mean, like
for
it is
for a
because I
couple,
played
yeah,
Niv Mizzet.
yeah, for a
I
couple
played
cards,
Niv Mizzet.
yeah.
So yeah.
And I'm just saying that like you have 4 different Curiosity effects, and then you have Niv Mizzet in the deck, and like that helps you find your Niv Mizzet to get to there. Now we've never seen Niv Mizzet Pirate, but I feel like it should come out sometime soon. Going up next, and this is going to be, and I'll just quickly go through this. We can talk about this, but I'm just going to put them both together. It's back-to-back 1.5s from both of your decks, Grimgrin and Neheb. This is a deck. This is the Bane with Hapatra. I don't understand why it is so good. It is a big, red, dumb deck that can do a lot of damage and produce a lot of mana, which you would think is like really good, but then I like look at it and I go, well, why can't we stop that? Where's like the card advantage? And you always get Reignite the Future, or whatever that card is, and it always just allows you to efficiently go through your deck and find the very last pieces of reach that you need to win the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can agree with Nahab being 1.5 for sure. It still like lacks the optimal build that Crick or no, like Crick's not even fully optimal, but Hapatra's pretty optimal. So it definitely has some pitfalls, but I think Grimgrin's more of tier 2 with Krenko. And
you think because of the
it's hard because it's so easy to get the infinite combo off, but like if you don't have it, it's not as good.
That's true. It does suffer from, even though zombies are such a supported tribe, I do think it does suffer from that. Um,
Yeah, and it's hard. Again, it's hard to evaluate it because
which is
it's so easy. It is so easy to get the Gravecrawler combo off, but like if you don't have it, then it's a pretty slow rolling deck. And that's not to say like it's still tier two. It still can absolutely hold its own, but
yeah,
it's like not on the same level in my opinion. It's like some of these other things. Like it just doesn't have the same consistency.
which is why I want to take Magda down, because I feel like it's so much more flavorful with like all those bad dwarves that he plays in the deck. But like you said, it's just
Yeah,
just
I
get
guess
into the
that you're
combo.
right. Like, yeah, Magda and Grimgrin feel like they're pretty similar. They're almost like on the same exact
But this can
level.
tutor the combo, and I feel like it's way more efficient. And it seems like he always gets the 5 treasures to get, like you said, Cloudstone Curio. So
Hmm.
not much argument out of that. And finally, I feel like Croxa is 3.5.
Bane of James. No, it's not. Croxa's got some infinite combos, so I actually put it
It
up a
has
little bit higher.
is 2, but one even doesn't even do anything when it happens.
You mean you have World Gorger combo,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the Necrotic Ooze combo?
To make infinite black mana, which then I need to like then have a bunch of red mana to then dump into Croaks over and over again. I feel like the deck needs to be tuned again. I built it a certain way off of an idea that someone else had, with Necrotic Ooze being like a very integral part of the deck, and I didn't capitalize on that. Like I was playing like Skirk Prospector, which was bad, but and I'm playing like some really bad cards in it that I really need to take out, like Mortuary, but I feel like it's just on the same level as like Zur. It just hasn't been fine tuned enough to the point where
Yeah,
like I'm not playing Entomb. Like I found out that I'm not playing Entomb in the deck. Like I need to be playing these cards that'll really help me get to my strategy that I really want to do. So
I'm just a little biased because we lost to it the first couple of times you played it, but so I thought it was like a little better than 3.5. But now I like looking at it objectively from like an outside point of view. Points because yeah, there's some issues with the consistency and if you don't have a combo lined up. But still, like the first couple of times you played it, it dragged us into the piece some things together.
mm-hmm. All right. Well, that being said, we may make changes to this going forward, but as of right now, this is where we've stood on our decks with as of May 13th, 2022.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
how many decks we have?
yeah. So this is the play group that we. I mean, I think this is every deck that we play. I'm gonna be upset if we missed one or two, and I really tried to get them all in here, but this is a pretty good list. I feel like we have a pretty good understanding of where we would have these decks. But yeah, that being said, I want to just thank you for watching, and if you have any kind of interest, please like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell for notifications. It'll really help out the channel. We're gonna start putting content up as soon as possible, hopefully. Just going forward.
And this will give you guys a good background on like the deck. So if you see like a gameplay video coming up and you see XYZ deck or WXYZ decks, and you can just refer to this tier ranking list and figure out where it is. And then you can also visit our Moxfield pages, moxfield.com/scoopdragon, or whatever your link is. I don't know what it is.
It's spider_brand, but yeah. So like all of that information is going to be down in the description. I'll definitely be including all of that if you want to take a deeper look into all the deck lists. If you have any suggestions, please, if you look at the deck list, put them in the comments. Follow us on Moxfield. Put those on the comments of the decks. Anything that will give us any kind of like help moving forward. But yeah, with that being said, I just want to sign off. I'm Brandon, and I'm joined by Jordan, and we will see you next time.